Reflect on these risks, and then how do they impact on you? I will not look at the details in the budget. Peter will cover that and the panelists. But the government has done one good thing, and personally believe it's a very good budget. When you look at the background to the budget, it says it is anchored on what they call ATMs, agro-industrial development. Again, all of us sing, we're a predominantly agricultural economy. This number of people depend on it. What are we doing about it? Now the government has made that a key pillar in driving our economy forward, and man has been put. Tourism is critical. For those who like hiking, government wants to put facilities, rest facilities along the highways. They are going to put ladders for you to go to Mount Rwenzori to make your hiking, a great experience. So these are all good things. Minerals, including oil and gas, is key, of course, then science. So Kira featured a lot in the minister's speech, a lot, including the president. Of course, then the other piece, the enablers, looking at the public goods and services and how all of that then will work together with the ATMs to power us to Vision 2040, even as we begin our NDP 4. So generally, when you look at the budget, it's aligned to the basic core objective of this government, looking at the social transformation of this country, to make sure there is money in each and every individual. And the budget speaks to that. I believe Dr. Muhumusa will highlight some of those elements. So it was good. And Peter will show us where the man has gone, the size of the economy. I will not give you the statistics. But from a KPMG perspective, we as Assurance would love to see, as Uganda wants to move into middle income, I don't know whether, Sad, this time you have a chance again to declare and to welcome us to middle income status. But last time we did that, we discovered that the statistics were not making sense. Then when we had the national population census, again, numbers were disputed. As a country, we have not yet understood the power of data, accuracy, completeness, the relevance of this information to investors, to decision makers. So what I expected in this budget, there is a piece on education, but what about assurance? Yes, Auditor General does the audits. There was a very interesting statement by the minister. Sub-county chiefs are meant to introduce annual reports, listing the assets and monitoring effort over PDM. How reliable is that information? Who is going to give assurance on it? So these are challenges that we have, and hopefully the budget will speak to that. Otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, I was not meant to start talking about the budget. There are people who are competent to do that. Mine is to say, karibuni sana, welcome to KPMG and your budget dinner. We are happy to see you, and I would like the team to lead you to the serving points. We have dinner, and then we immediately begin the discussions. Otherwise, thank you so much for honoring our invitation. Welcome, feel at home, enjoy the evening. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Steve, are you going to go and hike?
Once the ladders have been properly put in place.
Steve, I think we need to have another discussion. We are looking for PDM money. You're going to hike. I think we need to harmonize. Ladies and gentlemen, our ushers are going to pick a few tables at a time. We are very civilized people. We are not going to go and crowd on the lines for food. In the meantime, we're just going to continue sharing some few experiences as the ushers are taking us to have dinner. So if they pick on you, don't worry. If you want a second helping, feel free to go back once, twice. Feel at home. At KPMG, we believe you make us happy, so we'll also make you happy on budget dinner. Isn't it? Jemima, you're going to go hiking, or you've left it for Mr. Stephen Ineget?
I'll go with Steve.
You go with Steve.
Yes.
But you know, before when we were interacting, we were looking for people who have received PDM money.
Steve.
People have received PDM money and they don't know.
That's right.
Steve
People
said
didn't know.
maybe they sent to Steve's phone number.
Yeah, that's where our PDM money is.
And because people are not willing to acknowledge that they have received PDM money. In fact, in this whole room today, only 2 people have acknowledged.
They didn't receive the notification. Maybe that's like we asked the wrong question.
But the government has even offered to pay bank charges, meaning that the problem is not even bank charges. It is walk to the bank. People, if you go to the bank and find random money, don't ask questions. That is PDM money. Let us first agree, based on Steve's testimony, that if you go to the bank, find money, PDM, enjoy, but you'll account in future. The other thing that came out, Benson told us that for him, he has people in high places and his people have received. So those who don't know how to receive, we have Benson. I think Benson was introduced at the back there. You can ask him, how do we get this PDM money? Me, I'm interested. But to re-emphasize, PDM might be for our communities. But I had another question for Steve. Steve, you said sub-county chiefs are going to prepare spreadsheets and account for this money. But you didn't talk about training for them to use computers. You didn't talk about how is it? We are still signing using our fingerprints. Steve has denied. He has denied all of you. He has denied. The reality is we are in adventure. We are still going through the adventure stage.
The adventure phase.
Adventure stage. We are learning as we go.
True.
Earlier on, we were cracking jokes around this EPS penalty that came out. It is not going anywhere. The minister said it's staying.
But we can put fish.
But we said that fish story will not work because the penalties are issued manually. As the vehicle is passing, they turn the camera, it sees the back number plate.
You put both sides.
So you'll be a fish lover or an evader of taxes?
Fish lover.
Fish lover.
Yes.
So Ugandans are going to get creative in this. Well, but it's election season. There is no way the government is not bringing back EPS. How shall we give our votes?
We have to give votes, and we can't give votes with penalties.
I saw an MP who said that Mr. Katumba Wamala does not wish the government well. His words, don't quote me. He said, but these people of Ministry of Works introducing this penalty when we are going in election season, these people don't wish us well. Because as a ruling government, when people are very bitter, you people are going to vote because of EPS penalties. I thought we are going to vote because of the money in UDB.
And EPS penalties.
No, Jemima. We have to grow from small things to very big things. One of the other things that I think we are going to realize this year, and to take heart, we shall keep re-emphasizing, as Ugandans, there is this gospel that is continuously preached. Don't rely on your salary. Creator, employers, don't hear this one, because employers have a tendency to tell you must only do. What do they normally say? You should not engage in any other activities. But there is an exemption for Ugandan businesses for the next, is it 3 years from now or whenever I start?
Well, I think from whenever you start, until the law is repealed.
Until the law is repealed?
Yes.
So guys, some of you have been wanting to start those small businesses at home. I think this one speaks to us as individuals. Of course, those who are not Ugandans here, you can still ask for citizenship. We are open to receive you. And that will be very good for Ugandan businesses, I believe. And for many of us who are trying to encourage our sisters, our brothers, our young ones, this is the time to start businesses. Because at least they will not have. Do we know how much the taxman holds in our businesses? For a company, the taxman is a 40% shareholder. For any company. But even on your salary.
40%.
But even on your salary, the taxman is a 40% shareholder. So let's not look at this exemption as very small. But Jemima, we might start year one, they repeal next year.
They won't repeal next year. They are good people.
We still have hope in the government that this is a well-intended amendment. We start these businesses, give them a chance to thrive. After 3 years, we hope they'll be on a trajectory to grow. For those in policy, we're still looking forward to seeing real impact. One of the things that came out is we have reduction in rates of electricity, but we have not yet felt the impact. Can we feel the impact? If we have some people here in policy, can we feel the impact of the reduction in the electricity rates? And one of the things also that we liked this time around when people were making noise about the EPS penalties is people have remembered that there's actually a road fund. Hey, you people had forgotten that there's a road fund. And that road fund is what is supposed to maintain these roads. We are going to have a panelist from Ministry of Finance. So hey, prepare those questions and ask them to the right people. Because if we don't ask these questions, we'll not get the right knowledge. Jemima.
Yes.
Security is still taking a very large chunk of our budget.
9.9 trillion.
And Mr. Kasaija, when he came, he said Uganda is very
safe.
I hope we believe we are very safe.
Are we?
Are we?
Mark, I have a question. If we are very safe, why do we need 9.9 trillion?
Hey, you're now asking me. I am not Mr. Kasaija.
I just want to know.
But we need to, the president of the US has also been advocating for a bigger
budget
investment in the military. So we are coping. We are also trying to stay relevant.
We're learning from the big boys.
Yes, we have to stay relevant. Buy new equipment, buy better guns. Last year we were building roads in Congo. At least this year there's no road going to Congo. Maybe we are maintaining it.
But was the road completed?
Anyone in road construction? Was the road to Congo completed? This is our money. We need to ask for accountability. Was the road to Congo completed? Anyone with information to that regard? The good thing, Minister of Finance is here. You people, I'm cheating for your exams. When the time for asking questions reaches, don't say I don't have a question.
But Mark, shall we also maintain that road?
Which one? The one to Congo?
The one we built.
I could ask you a question, but I hope the cameras will not record me. They said we are one of the leading gold exporters. Did you see how much gold we're exporting?
Oh.
Have you seen have you been to a gold mine in Uganda?
No, I haven't, but they did 10.
Me, I wanted to hear from a guy in gold. Someone who's dealing in gold. Do we have anyone dealing in gold in this room? Be brave and tell us. We might be your customers. Okay, we buy small quantities, but we'll support you. We still have questions around gold. The other day, the president told us we have very large gold reserves. Maybe we need to align our businesses to tap into these opportunities. People are not sharing. We exported $3 billion worth of gold last year.
From our gold reserves.
Mr. Antege, you look like you know someone you look like you might know someone who's already, tell us where this opportunity is. Some of us are eager to invest.
Now that we have the exemption.
Mr. Antege is using very complicated words and he doesn't want to go to the microphone. We are here to share opportunities. Someone said oil and gas. Mr. Bezo behind there said oil and gas is coming in 2 years.
2 years.
In 2 years. Have we started repositioning ourselves to tap into oil and gas? Have we? For those of us in the hotel industry, have we set up some new hotels in the Albertine region?
But Mr. Mark,
I mean, this is an opportunity to market our businesses. Yes, Jemima.
The minister said that for the jobs in the oil and gas, the Ugandans have taken over. 84% were awarded to Ugandans.
But I thought these are Ugandans.
Which ones?
The people in this room.
Maybe they just don't want to share their information.
You people share where the opportunities are. We are here to interact, share, understand.
Be suppliers.
Be suppliers. Some people in here might bring eggs, others will bring fish, others will bring...
It's to the oil and gas industry.
Yes, everybody must eat. Aren't we all going to eat? We are all going to eat.
We're going to eat eggs.
The reality is, okay, people from the not-for-profit sector, how many of us have set up some NGOs in the Albertine region to help the people who are disadvantaged there? This is the time maybe to lobby for some donations from some of these multinational corporations that are going to suffer from transfer pricing restrictions. Feel free to share. The reality is, as a developing nation, it is our duty to share opportunities, to influence policy, and show our friends where the money is. Don't eat that gold money alone. If Mr. Mumuza was not going to eat me, I would have asked him, but let me leave him to first eat. He has a presentation. Jemima, Mr. Mumuza will tell us where the gold money is coming from.
You tell us about the gold. And they told us there were 10 gold mines that were established.
10 gold mines.
Companies, refineries. Is it companies? Did he say companies? 10 of them.
Wow. Such a big opportunity in gold. Me, I'm waiting for the refinery. I'm hoping a liter of fuel will go to like 1,000 shillings.
When?
Then
In 2
we
years'
can-
time.
Yes, then we can drive at 30 kilometers per hour. I think that would be fair. Hey,
But I thought we were going to joke.
to Rwenzori.
Yes.
But you see that Rwenzori opportunity is very good. If you've ever been to the source of the Nile, how many of us have been to the source of the Nile in Jinja? Who has been to the source of the Nile in Jinja? Every time you go to the source of the Nile, we used to pray, my God, God, may you speak to the people in policy and they do something about this place. Was that my prayer alone? I remember there used to be a very small floating buoy in blue, source of the Nile. Do you have a different image of the source of the Nile from what I have? Anyone has a different image? At least I was happy the equator, there's that equator monument that was built that is looking very, very nice.
Yes.
So as we're trying to tap into tourism opportunities, it is good to see, maybe we are the ones supposed to propose these things for government.
But government, the minister mentioned the source of the Nile in his speech.
What are they doing at the source of the
I'm
Nile?
not sure, but he said something.
Someone whispered and said they are building a very long pier
A long pier.
from one side of the river all the way to the source of the Nile. So for those of you who have not been to Jinja in a long time, please go back and see the new redeveloped source of the Nile and support the economy. And when you go, don't just pay the entrance fees, support the local people as well, so that your money gets trickled down. Some of you are in gold and you're making a lot of money.
We go with our gold?
Not gold, money, money. Mr. Kasaija said money will come. Eventually, he said money has come. I am still waiting to see a Ugandan who's saying money is here. I'll give you some money. Me, I want to meet people, by the way, who are giving out money. Well, we can discuss the terms and conditions.
And here who has said money came.
Wait, ask who?
My dear friend,
Let the friend share. Money came.
please share with us. We want to know where is that money. I'm waiting for it from the minister. That's what she said. She's also waiting from the minister.
But now if we are all waiting, you people, when are we going to wait? Election season is here. Can we ask very hard questions?
Who are we asking the hard questions? The minister.
Who are members of parliament? At this rate, someone has to account for where the money went. Someone once told me, do you see how we are always crying about taxes? We're always crying about taxes. But we all belong to a certain constituency somewhere, don't we? The people who are supposed to approve or reject these amendments are our representatives. How many of us know our area MPs? Or even have their numbers?
They don't share their numbers.
But we are not going to ask for money. Money is not there.
They don't know that.
The reality is, good people, we are in election season. Tell our people, instead of asking for hoes and kilos of sugar, let us ask for favorable tax policy. Is it too big to ask? Who thinks it's not too big to ask, honestly? Is it too big to ask for favorable tax policy? The pay-as-you-earn threshold is still at 235,000. One EPS penalty. One EPS penalty. And in fact, if they add the surcharge, it is not enough. It is not. So guys, can we advocate 235,000 is too low? It's too low.
True.
It was set in 2012.
12.
Imagine from 2012, we are still at 235,000 as what we don't pay tax on for those of us in employment. So don't ask for that MP for a kilo of sugar for a whole. Let us ask for favorable tax policy. If we came, they have said it is coming back. We were telling the people who came before that the 6 million has gone away. But now we have
Double
the VAT. We now have double the VAT. So whereas the amendment is going to favor the traders who made noise because you people didn't make noise. Let us agree you people didn't make noise. So the 6 million has gone away, meaning that the trader who has issued 50,000, it has VAT, which is very little, will not pay 6 million. Will pay double the VAT. But some of you issue invoices of 100 million, way over above the 6 million. So when you don't put it through IFRIS, the penalty will be double the VAT. I hope we are clear today. So when you start to see those penalties coming, please know this is the change that we asked for. In other words, what are we saying? It is not to scare you, and Peter will come and tell you. It is not to scare you, it is to encourage you to engage in change in tax policy. Don't shy away from influencing tax policy. Jemima,
Yes, Mark.
are the people eating that side?
The people this side do not know people in high places.
It is good to know people in
They're
high
not
places.
connected.
Someone once told me a story that don't change your seat when they are serving food. Otherwise, they will leave you this side.
And they start with
You go the other side. When you go that side, everybody has eaten. And they forget you. Then you come back this side, everybody this side has eaten. And then you miss food like that. Ladies and gentlemen, if you realize at the end of this discussion you've not eaten, just walk yourself to the serving counter. No one will ask you a question. Just pick a plate and start eating. The purpose of today's session is really to hear. Feel free to share your experiences. Engage us. Engage the people here. Also share ideas with the people seated on the table where you are. I hope you didn't come with the same people and you're seated with them on the same table. If you came with the same people after eating, please change. DJ, give us some music and then we allow, since now I believe almost the whole room has gotten food. We still have 2 tables at the back. Our ushers, we still have 2 tables at the back. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the meal. If you want more food, there is more food. We will not be like the PDM. It's not only 100 million. Enjoy yourself.
Buli wembera tuba fembi buli wentula nkulaba buli wetambula kuweka buli wenyimba kuzanya endongo yange nyimbira oluyimba endongo yange wagala nyimbira kayimbako nyimbira kayimbako nyimbira kayimbako endongo yange endongo yange endongo yange endongo yange usimye ncha no words can explain the love that I have for you omuze ebirowoozo n'okakkanya omutima gwange teryakwekana endongo yange nyimbira oluyimba endongo yange nyimbira oluyimba nyimbira kayimbako nyimbira kayimbako nyimbira kayimbako endongo yange endongo yange endongo yange endongo yange
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope we are enjoying our dinner and everyone has got a plate. In case you haven't, please just move to the tables. As we have our meals, we are going to invite our first presenter for our evening. That's our partner, Mr. Assad Lukwago. He'll be taking us through the economic highlights from the brief. So all those things that you heard that the minister said and were complex to your ears, he's going to break them down. Mr. Assad Lukwago, you're welcome.
Hello, good evening, fellow compatriots. Good evening, everyone. I know we don't talk when we're eating in Uganda, but just to recognize that at least you're hearing. Good evening, everyone. Very good. We're very happy to have you around. I personally prefer to call you fellow citizens. Currently already introduced you as clients and staff. I personally, because of the occasion, I think the citizenship normally overpowers me. I will not necessarily need any introductions on my part, but I'm going to cover the global perspective. So the way we're going to do an analysis for you, we have to do the macroeconomic analysis. Of course, then we go into the tax and then eventually the panel discussion. What we normally do when we're doing the macroeconomic analysis, we look at the global perspective. Why do we do that first? It's because at the end of the day, we are so interconnected as a country, as an economy to the rest of the world. And of course, as we're analyzing what's going on here, a lot can be happening out there that then drives some of the factors here that can drive from the strategies that you have for your company, where you source your materials, where you send your supplies, or you're selling to your customers who are not in the country, to what you stock even in your fridge, can be affected by factors that are outside of the country. So that's why we always prefer to do the global perspective before we do the deep dive into the local dynamics. And I would start off by saying that all macroeconomic analysts that were doing projections for the global economy for 2025 and beyond, all the factors, there were so many factors that were, of course, you saw from beginning of 2024 to date, there were so many global factors that were affecting the trajectory of the global economy. However, all those variables were trumped the day the US president was sworn in January. And therefore, everyone had to rewrite all the projections. The IMF had to redo their projections for 2025 just because of what Trump did after his inauguration. All other development agencies, they had to relook at World Trade Organization, had to review the projections for global world trade. And as such, it is very important to understand where all that is coming from. So the way I prefer normally to give this analysis, I like to give you a little bit of context from what you're seeing today, or a little bit that you're seeing today, where does it come from, to make sense of everything. Then I'll give you a perspective of where we are and where we're going in the future. So the past that I will talk you through is the global trade history. There are so many countries that have amassed lots of surpluses, but at the same time, there are so many other countries that have got into significant deficits over time, and that's the past. And that has slowly by slowly been brewing anger in some of the economies that have accumulated too much deficit over time. And in the present, many of them have reacted by significantly rewriting their foreign policies, and the global world order has been put upside down the way we knew it. I think it's totally going to change. And of course, the tariffs that you're aware of and other trade barriers have all come because of that past that I think it's important. And of course, in the process of doing so, and the reactions that some of the economies are doing, the other economies which are being fought are also not seated. Just that whatever they're doing most of the time is not in the limelight. So I will talk you through as well about that. So where are we? Where are we coming from? For generations, so the graph that I put up there for you is to just give you a snapshot of the global trade history. Where we stand today is that China has the highest share of world trade, and it reached that level in 2023. The red line there, the red graph is China, and the red dot. The blue one is the European Union. Of course, you know, it started in the 2000s, and the US is the green one, which, I don't know, it may be black to some people, but that's the US. And what you see right now, that China is dominating the global world trade, followed by the European Union, and the US is below that. What has caused this? For a good number of years, up to the 1970s, the developed economies were faced with growing real wages, meaning that the workers, their wages were outpacing inflation for a long time, up to the 1980s. From that moment on, the real wages stopped growing, meaning that the general workers in all developed economies, their wages stayed flat while inflation was going up. And what technically that means that every good that a worker was consuming, a household was consuming, was more expensive than what they could afford. And that's why most of the debt, like mortgages, credit cards, student loans, all those came up in the last 40 years. The people who are younger than 40 years, you may not know, you may think that the world has always had debt. Most of the debt started in the last 40 years, just because of that shift between real wages stopping to grow, but then inflation surpassing the growth of real wages. Then what that caused is the brewing of anger within societies, inability to afford a normal life, that the people were used to, especially in the developed economies. And now all of a sudden, everyone is taking that out on each other. That's why you've seen discrimination becoming acute during that period, where you see authorities very brutal, where you see protectionist tendencies in different organizations. It has been brewing slowly by slowly over time in societies, and ended up within various government policies. So that is exactly what has been happening in the US economy, in the European economy, all developed economies. And the capitalists, because they were benefiting, real wages are going down or flat, but efficiency was increasing because of technology coming up. So you'd find that investors, the shareholders, maybe you call them employers, their incomes were going up, because what does a worker give is efficiency or output. What do they get? They get a wage. So if efficiency is increasing, but the real wages are staying flat, you'll have then significant income inequality coming up. Investors being wealthier and wealthier, whereas the normal mass is staying with that imbalance. So that has therefore driven many companies to look for more and more ways of gaining efficiencies. What did they do? They have to look for other places with even cheaper labor. And that's where the conversation about China comes in. So the trajectory of China, the way you see that graph is so steep, while the one for the US, almost at the same time, it was dropping sharply in the 2000s, simply because everyone in the US felt, and even Europe, felt that for you to get the maximum profits, you had to outsource whatever you're producing to the cheaper economies, and that was China. They were bringing up China without knowing, India and all other economies. So that's why you see the global trade. So all manufacturing businesses, everything that you're doing, textiles, whatever you're talking about, they had to be outsourced to China. iPhone may be branded as designed or whatever in California, but it's assembled from China. So that, therefore, brought up the general trade in China to surpass the rest of the developed world. So what has this caused? In the past 20 or so years, since 2000, the graph on your left, the bottom this time around is the US. The one at the top is China. Blue means trade surpluses. Red means deficits. So in those 20 years, China has been making a net surplus through trade, cumulatively up to 8 or so trillion. And then whereas the US has been in deficit up to close to 18 trillion. And if you look at the total debt of the US, it's like 30-something trillion, of which half of it has all been amassed in that period. And where does most of this deficit come from for the US? That's the graph on your right-hand side. China, because majority of the output that is produced in China, or the imports that they use imports, come from China, whereas they export very little. This is a trajectory, therefore, that is pointing towards the direction the US empire has been going for the past 20, 30 years. And that is the same trajectory that you've seen the Chinese empire has been going. And Trump does not want that, and the Americans do not want that to go on. And they are right. However, the methods that they are using to intercept that may not be right, and they may cause further problems. What have they done in the process is to tear down the general international world order, the way we knew it. In the words of Trump, he said that everyone in the world has literally ripped us off. That is his view of the world. It doesn't matter whether it's a friend or foe, all the allies, he feels that everyone has ripped off America for a very long time. And the society within the US, and it's important to know some of this background, the society, like you imagine you have a manufacturing company in the US, and then most of those factories are sent out to China because it's cheaper there. The labor, all the people who used to work in the factories in the US, what happens to those people? Or the owners or the shareholders who used to have shares in those companies, what happens to those people? Over time, they start hating that system, the entire global world order, the way it was. They start hating it, they just don't know who to blame. And that's the anger that you see in the current generation. When I say current generation, I don't mean the young people. Actually, all of us. Everyone is asking, why is everyone brutal? Why is people discriminatory? Why protectionist tendencies? It is that has been building up over time. Now, so those people felt that the current world order, the way it is not working for them. And for that reason, voting a person like him was a no-brainer because they just wanted to change the existing system. And he did not disappoint. You know, he has abandoned all his US commitment to the key allies, and specifically, I think the most clear evidence there is the NATO, where he sided with Putin, you know, against the rest of the Europe's interest. Unbelievable. You saw some of the votes, the vote on Ukraine. US sided with Russia in that UN vote. The ones for Israel and Palestine, the ceasefire, it was US, the only one who vetoed that vote. When you look at all the other, what you'd call the post-Bretton Woods agreements, things like the Paris Climate Agreement that was signed, he immediately withdrew out of that, I think around 20th January. Like, he was sworn in a day before, the following day he withdrew out of that. Why did he withdraw out of that? He felt like America is paying an unfair share towards addressing climate change issues, while China, in his words, are polluting with impunity. So he had to get out of that because he feels everyone is ripping them off. The Human Rights Council, because of the probes that they are doing on what is happening in the Middle East, had to withdraw out of that. World Health Organization withdrew out of that because, again, feeling they're paying an unfair share of the World Health budget. But Dr. Muhumza even added one more item for me here, is that they refused to call coronavirus the Wuhan virus. So, and that was in his first term. So as soon as he turned up now, get out of World Health funding, World Health Organization. Sanctioned ICC because of the whatever they did on the leadership in Israel, and then of course disrupted America's international reach by terminating USAID. All that, when you look at what is happening, is just the reversal of the world order, the way we knew it. And an analyst said that Trump's way of doing things is more of the old school imperialism. Expand America's territory, when you talk of Panama Canal, when you talk of Greenland, and then extract wealth from others. That is the typical formula for imperialism. You know, Ukraine, he just wants the rare earth minerals. Here on our south and on our west, Congo, the reason why there are those arrangements with Rwanda is because they want to sign up rare earth mineral deals with Congo. So extract as much as possible from the rest of the world as a payback for all that they ripped you off. So that is his model of doing things. And of course, on top of that, the trade barriers that with the tariffs. Now, everyone, all of you know about the story of the tariffs. That's why I'm not talking too much about that. But the escalation of that peaked on the 2nd of April, where he almost put a unanimous tariffs across all trading partners across the whole world. And of course, when faced with retaliations, then he paused those for 90 days, but retained some on China specifically, and then retained a flat 10%. At some point, the tariffs reached, it was a tit for tat, reached 125%, China retaliating against the 145% tariff on the US goods. So what are the others who are not dramatic, the ones you're not seeing? What are they doing? They are not quiet. Talk of, the the East. I don't know even East anymore, because some of the West are also now affected by these policies. And to me, it's the future of finance. What is happening behind the scenes in the middle of all this? In my view, we might see the US dollar not being a dominant currency in the near future, and it might go down with the US empire along with it. Why? This is how the whole thing has been unraveling. So there were sanctions against Russia. Those sanctions had two things that were terrible. The first one is to freeze all Russian foreign assets worth close to $300 billion. By freezing that, everyone woke up and said, okay, this can happen to me. Then they were switched off SWIFT. Again, everyone said, oh, this can also happen to me. That kick-started an interesting trend, which I think most of us may not have paid attention to it, the gold repatriation. Majority of the central banks hold their global, their national reserves in the US, some in the UK, but majority in the US in form of gold and others in form of the US dollar. Now, many countries started repatriating gold back to their sovereign states because of the sanctions and the confiscation, let me call it that, of Russian assets. And that trend was happening. But this gold is not just, doesn't stop at that. You had the minister read, I don't know that Dr. Mumza will talk about it later, that our number one export, and actually it has been the number one export, is gold for the past almost 10 years, you know? And I will explain to you why, actually, to me, that is a serious problem. It's good for now, but we are not looking far enough. So majority of the countries are hoarding and buying and accumulating gold because the financial settlement system is going to change. And there's going to come a new currency that is no longer the US dollar. And that currency will be pegged on half gold and half the national currency of that country, whoever is participating in that, as I will explain shortly. So then you had the BRICS. After Russia was sidelined, of course, China as usual, North Korea, all those, they had to find a way of trading with each other. And indeed, they are doing so and doing settlements in their own respective currencies other than the US dollar. And if you've not heard of this, hear it from here, the word M-Bridge. M-Bridge. That was a platform that not only the BRICS, some people think it was the BRICS that came up. It's trying to rival SWIFT, a settlement system. The Bank of International Settlement, together with very many other countries and almost all BRICS countries anyway, they are trying to they came up with a project 4 years ago on how can they do international settlements without using SWIFT, without relying on the US dollar. And that project was declared viable in September 2024, last year, and meaning that actually it can work, and it's going to work. And the way it is designed is that it's going to be running on those new technology, the ledgers technology, and that's why it's also important to understand the AI here and all other aspects that come along with the technology. And different countries will be able to settle trades with each other directly in their respective currencies without necessarily relying on SWIFT, without relying on the US dollar. And some of those transactions, they did some pilot, and it would actually work. And whoever will have the highest, strongest currency and therefore strongest economic power in that new world order, you will have to have very strong reserves of gold. That's why they're buying our gold to build up for this future. We are selling the gold for today. I don't know whether we're getting enough taxes from it anyway. So it is important that we get to know these dynamics that are happening globally so that when all this comes to settle down, we don't now start going back to the way we've always been complaining. The colonialists did this, because it's just going to find us when we are here and when we are ready, and they will bypass us so quickly when they accumulated and amassed all these reserves, when we have nothing, and we shall not be able to play on these global plates. The other dynamic that is happening that shows a signal of changes in world trade settlements is the dumping of the US debt securities. Of course, you know very well, US, I think, is the highest by miles indebted country. And the debt is, of course, treasury bonds, treasury bills. The largest holders of US treasury bills and bonds, China, UK, Japan, have been reducing their stock of US bonds. And if they're buying any new, they are investing more in bills, treasury. The bankers know this better than everyone else. But by you exiting a bond, you don't see a long-term future in the US economy. When you go for treasury bills, because they are short-term, 1 year, so they are replacing them with that. But in any case, their holding is reducing anyway. And that's not a good sign. When that happens, of course, if your debt is dumped, that technically means there will be no off-taker for your future auctions. That means you have to raise interest rates. No one is very much interested in investing in it anyway. So interest rates will go up, and that will immediately affect the US economy. And then the final signal that has been going on that people don't know is the yuan or the RMB swap. What's happening? China is going on with so many countries and doing direct currency swaps. They've done this with Saudi Arabia, I think to a tune of $50 billion. South Korea, who is supposed to be an American ally, around to a tune of like $46 billion. Argentina, which is in South America, they entered the currency swap with them and they fixed their economy with that. Nigeria, who is our brothers here, they've gone through that. UAE, they've done a currency swap. What is going on here is that if anyone wants to buy anything from China, you don't have to look for the dollar. Yeah, so, but people do not, the countries do not have enough yuan or RMB. So what is China doing? It's telling, no, get my yuan, give me your currency. It is straightforward. And therefore, every time I buy anything from you, I'll pay you using the cash that you've given me. And when you buy from me, pay me using, it's as simple as like they are stocking your cash vaults with their currencies. And they're doing this across board. And therefore, they are trading already without relying on this. Now, if the US dollar ceases, and it's actually happening, I think in China, the total trade volume in China is now, majority of it is now in the yuan. I think it just surpassed the US dollar. I think it's about 53 now in yuan, 40-something 7 in the US dollar. So it is actually happening. So if this now comes together, what is going to happen? One, means that sanctions will never be effective anymore, because then how will you stop Iran from buying whatever they want to buy? They're not going to use your dollar or your SWIFT system. They'll do whatever they want to do. And therefore, your economic power has to go. So this is going to affect the international trade settlements. It's going to affect the funds transfers. And I believe the strength of the dollar will go down, and it might go down with the American empire. Today, if you're looking at GDP of the various countries, the US is, I think, $25 trillion GDP. Russia is about 1.5 trillion. So clearly Russia is not an enemy anymore, as in not a threat. 1.5 versus 25 trillion. European Union is $35 trillion GDP. And guess the People's Republic of China, 17 trillion. Very close to the 25 trillion of the US. But why is that too close? It might look a bit of a distance. The US economy has been growing to approximately 2% or so for the past couple of years, decades. The Chinese have been growing double digits for majority, except during the COVID period, meaning that catching up is so quick. And to me, this trend has started, and unfortunately, Trump has accelerated it, but even annoying the few allies that they had, that way they cannot have trust And all that trust has been eroded, and it's going to go beyond his tenure. So what does this mean from a local perspective? There are, of course, opportunities and risks in all this. With all these trade barriers and tariffs, there's going to, of course, be a direct increase in trade costs. For all of us, whoever is importing things, exporting things, if a good is imposed with a tariff, clearly it will be more expensive. I think that's a no-brainer. And then household consumption behavior and savings behavior is going to change because of the sentiments. If you look at the, the way a normal household behaves, the way a normal investor behaves, when there are negative signals, they are not normally good signals. And of course, there's going to be increased competition from China. What do I mean? If you're producing apparel here in Uganda, now the Chinese cannot sell any more textile in the US. Where are they going to sell their goods? They're going to bring them here. So we are all going to face a lot of competition because now the market has shrunk for them. And of course, the impact on foreign direct investment for the least developed economies. The minister thinks we are not part of that. That's a conversation another day. And then, of course, other services that come along with that. If there's been a whole lot of shipments going to the US and the other way around to China, then freight companies that are doing clearing, forwarding, etc., all those will be affected. But then the opportunities that I would see here is, of course, there's going to be significant shifts. There already are diversions of trade, meaning that the US market now would want suppliers. Africa, we're here. We can replace China, can't we? So that's opening up for us, and we need to look at it in that form. But also at the same time, China has to replace the markets that they're losing. And why is that both a bad thing and a good thing? Is that we were used to getting cheap, poor quality Chinese stuff. Now, we can probably ask for better quality, isn't it? Because they have no other option. The quality they used to produce for the US. So these are the opportunities and the risks that come along with it. And when I say quality, it goes to manufacturer. If you're importing any equipment, you're importing anything, not just on our own usual households that we look at. But perhaps the most direct that we can obviously all see is the shift in these foreign policies. The day Trump was sworn in, immediately he had to freeze foreign aid for 90 days, and he dissolved USAID. USAID has been a huge, huge humanitarian organization, not only for us, but for the rest of the world, in especially health, defense, and other aspects. Now, that cash is getting out of our economy circulation. Immediately, he starts asking his allies, Europe, the members of NATO, to increase their defense budget to 5% of their GDPs, and they're significantly below that rate. So what do? The Prime Minister of the UK, before he goes to greet the new president, he had to do something to show him that he's complying with what he's demanding. And he said, okay, I'm going to increase the defense budget from 2.3 to 2.5. That's almost like 14-point-something billion GBP. And guess what are they cutting? Foreign aid. Meaning that the UK government is going to shift foreign aid away from supporting us to beefing up their defense. Same story, Europe, just recently. They also said that any aid they are giving out, it has to be linked to the policies or benefits or objectives of the EU that has. So what does this mean? Now, of course, it means that we knew we are already on our own, but now it's coming too fast and too thick for us. And when you look at the Africa priorities, we have a shortage of funding. For us to hit the SDGs by 2030, in Africa, we have a shortage of funding of $1.3 trillion annually to hit the SDGs by 2030. Now, we have to look from within ourselves. What are those options? You can unlock close to half a trillion of that through disciplined or more aggressive fiscal policies. That is the taxes, by enforcing compliance, expanding the tax base, and making sure that, you increase what you can collect through your domestic revenues. And those, I expect, therefore, all policies, and when Peter comes later on, I expect that he will be talking from more of that angle. So when you see a tightening of the budget, as in increasing of the taxes, this has to happen. Unfortunately, we have to fund ourselves. Natural resources can give us a lot, as well as Africa, if we tap into them and utilize them very well. And of course, you heard the minister talking about what we're doing for the extractive sector. Of course, the financial de-risking, making sure that we're not over-borrowed, and making sure that if we're borrowing at more concessional terms, if they still exist anyway, or at least avoid too much domestic debt. That can unlock a lot of capital for us. Then profit shifting, that's more of transfer pricing. Again, if you look at the policies, you'll find that the minister has announced a few tax bills that are speaking into that. And of course, corruption. Again, the minister talked a lot about that. We can save a lot. They're talking of digitizing that and to curb that. Those are all the right things the minister was saying. Now, whether Dr. Muhumuza agrees that they are going to do them or not, that will be another issue. But if Africa does all that, we're able to raise more than enough to keep us going. And talking of efficiency, now I'm coming home to Uganda. You are aware we're now just ended NDP 3. It's ending in the next 1 or 2 weeks. And I would say, personally, give credit where it's due. There have been some positives in terms of what we've achieved. If you look at the target for NDP 3 of nominal GDP versus what the outturn that we are expecting for 2025, we are not totally far off, more especially if the GDP per capita has held up above the $1,000 mark per capita, which is the benchmark for a middle-class income economy. The only problem where we are falling short is our debt. Our debt is above the levels that we had anticipated, most especially the domestic debt. That's the red digits that I put there. Domestic debt shouldn't be too high because it's extremely expensive. Then domestic arrears. This is an interesting topic. Domestic arrears is all the work that you've done for government, whether you're supplying, whether you're construction, wherever, a service provider, everything that we have all done for government, they've not paid us 13.1 trillion and 0.8 trillion, and I think last year was around 11 trillion. Guess how much they allocated us last year? 200 billion out of the 11 trillion last year. This year, the minister has allocated 1.4 trillion, we shall see on the next slide. But to me, that's a drop in the ocean, and the government is really curtailing the growth of our economy, because where can we go? Everyone is running away from us, so government has to pay people so that then we can be working. So the bankers here, if anyone comes with an invoice or a contract, a government contract, give them a mortgage, not a short-term loan, because I think it will come much later. And of course, the budget compliance and debt to GDP ratio, we are just at levels that are not as good. I think I messed up my own slides, guys. So now we're transitioned to NDP 4, which I'm personally not too excited. Honestly, these plans, we have very beautiful plans, but when you monitor on an annual basis, the biggest problem we normally have is the allocation, the budget allocation to the plan. You find that when you analyze the budget allocation to what the plan was saying, we are not normally allocating according to those plans. And of course, the sectors that the planning people are looking at, you'll hear the word ATMs. That's why I had to do it that way for you, so that then when you hear a word ATMs, those are the priority sectors. So all of you who are looking at your strategies, those are the sectors where the river is flowing. If you can swim along with that, so that then when we get to a $500 billion economy, you're one of those, and that's like a 10-fold growth in 15 years, which would have to be a remarkable growth over time. So overall, to achieve those, that's the budget that Minister has just read. 72.37 trillion is the number that you need to walk away with. Half of it is going to be through you paying taxes, and then the other half all has to be borrowed in one way or another, either externally or domestically. But when you look at also again, NDP4, and that's why I'm not too excited at the bottom there, the allocation, what NDP4 would have wished versus what we are going to do. First of all, on a quantum basis, we don't even have enough money to do everything that NDP4 anticipated for this year alone. But then also when you look at the productive sectors, that's your roads, health, and all others, versus the complementary sectors, again, the allocation is too skewed away from the productive sectors. So overall, I want now to leave this to Dr. Muhumuza to analyze for us and see whether indeed, the minister said that in March 2024, we met all the conditions that you need to get out of the least developed economies. And he was very passionate about that. And he said in his words that, what does he normally say? Colleagues, we have arrived. Those are the words that he used. And he was very excited about that. So what did I do? I went straight away to check on the UN website, a list of least developed economies. Unfortunately, UN does not update our records. Mr. Country Leader, you are talking of data, people not updating data. I think the problem may be with the UN, not with the minister. So with those remarks, allow me to hand over now to Dr. Fred to take us through the local budget. Thank you.
Hopefully I know how the logistics here work. If no one claps, I will share the claps with Assad. Since you already clapped, so I'm pegging myself there. Good evening, and I hope you have had a good dinner. I wanted almost to get back to Assad's slide here and begin by wondering, this is the first year of implementation. How could the NDP fail to harmonize with the Ministry of Finance on the matter of debt refinancing? That variation at least should come in future, but not in the beginning. Yeah, the NPA and the Ministry of Finance should be having a clear record there. And if I take the budget, maybe something popped in, but that's already a high figure, differences aside. If debt refinancing is that big, and refinancing is really, you are keeping it in the system. We need to be having a strategy on how do we finally knock out that principle we keep carrying along the way. I began by flashing out there, that's me, just for avoidance of doubt. I had a few questions that will guide our discussion, and it's going to be really short, so you need to be alert and carry away things. Where you don't agree, we shall have that over another dinner at your expense. So is the budget aligned to the president's priorities? He just gave them to us last Thursday, 10 of them. A number of them I found were subsets of others. So you could really condense them to about 4, but you want to tax without killing businesses. That's the president's priority. You also want to increase that domestic revenue. You want to increase market access. You want peace and security for persons and property. Those were some of the highlights he put out there. I have some few concerns that I wanted to share with you, and how have past budgets, because the budget is not really 2024-25 or 25-26. As you can see, those refinancings, it means a lot of numbers in the current budget were created years back. So this budget is also speaking to future budgets. But also some of the benefits we should be reporting on and which we report on are rising out of previous budgets. So there are certain things at this point in time we want to check if the previous budgets and national development plans did not give them to us, how is the current budget and the future budgets going to help us turn around that or consolidate that. So we'll be looking at some outcomes of budgets, not necessarily this one, but this being part of the continuum of budgets of government, you want to put that into context. And how is the budget helping us to build resilience, especially in the external sector? Assad has given us quite a lot of volatility out there, that we need to beef up our reserves. We need to prepare ourselves for those rainy days and those turbulence moments that Trump keeps giving around. He's hunting migrants, and quite some migrants are Ugandans. They might catch a few. That may dent our remittances. But there are other people who are not hunting Ugandan migrants. They are actually happy to receive them. So the budget should strategically be speaking to that, because remittances, going by the global dynamics, are going to be the fastest growing. Already the background, the budget which was given is telling us Uganda is receiving more from remittances than FDI. So is the budget speaking to that? How do we begin to target more of remittances than FDI? Because FDI come with all these demands. Remittances just prepare these Ugandans, put them on a plane. We now have a big airport. Let them go out there. We have mobile money. They can send their money home. They are not like FDI fellows who say, give me an industrial park. I need a bridge here. I need a railway there. There are people who have already built their bridges and railways abroad. Why don't we tap those and bring the money home? So really, to be part of global value chain is not a bad thing. You get those quick things. Is the budget speaking to those? And of course, I would end with the interest rates. So these are the president's priorities. If you didn't read them, please go and read them. This is not my business to share them with you. But there is one on fighting corruption, increasing market access to ESC and COMESA, and we'll look at the numbers there. Strengthening the private sector, this is a core thing. The one for me that I ran away with, which must be the beginning of everything, is number 8. Expenditure rationalization, which is restructuring of government. That we must do yesterday, because that will begin to help us to manage the runaway budgets. But it's the animal, the nightmare there. But we'll nudge the president and see how we tackle that, because it is the seed for every other one. I had some concerns on free interest rates for large commercial farmers. If you're a large commercial farmer, why should we give you a free loan, interest-free loan? And yet the person who badly needs it is not going. And bankers, please watch out, because it is only the interest that government will cover. The principal is yours. So if you lose your principal, you still need to vet those fellows. Because the money is yours. We are saying when he borrow, the interest government will pick it up, but many of them may not pay the principal. So caution to the bankers, don't get very excited. But I don't think that is a good way to go. Commercial farmers should live to their task of being commercial farmers. Otherwise, how did you become a commercial farmer? You must be a masquerader somewhere, and I'm yet to see them, those that really benefit from this. Also, the growth numbers, my friend Kagwa, I think some mathematics here, we need to get back to P7 with some of the colleagues who are giving us these numbers. If the economy grew from 203 trillion to 226, that growth rate is 11%. But what is being quoted is 6.3. Now, when you follow 6.3, the economy ends at 216 trillion, not 226. So somewhere somebody is putting, and the GDP is a key fundamental driver of all the others. So we need to get that right. We also made the same mistake last year. So if last year was not true and this year is not true, you know how far off we are. That needs to come back. These are facts. Because last year somebody did the same thing. So I don't know who to blame. Is tax to GDP therefore 14? Because it might actually be bigger, because the base seems to be bigger than the reality, if I go by the numbers that are in there. My young people in primary school alerted me on that one. Well, this is why we do these things. The current minus the previous divided by the previous, right? You get the growth rate. It comes as simple as that. So the stated growth rate would give us that. And the subsidies, we have a lot of subsidies which are a concern. And Mr. Museveni was dealing with these subsidies in his early years. Subsidies in the energy sector are going to introduce a very big challenge for us to sustain that sector. Telling some manufacturer will give you energy at 5 US cents when it costs 9 to 10 US cents, means who is going to pay the 4 US cents per unit? And these are the guzzlers of the power. And if EDCL cannot collect the money through the tariff, then it has to come on the budget. And already this budget is strained. So that means we are going to continue putting our energy sector to a big risk out of a policy distortion. And the budget needs to address those issues. So the outages and the blackouts that my friend namesake Muhumuza's people are facing are going to continue, but yet that is the ATMs. Letter M is about manufacturing. We are putting them into that big risk that we might not be able to finance the energy sector. The new measures, I'm surprised all these measures are only going to give us those little billions, 538. In a budget of 72 trillion, there is a problem that we might not increase revenues to levels that we need. But I also appreciate that the economy is literally not having that strength to match the budget, which for me takes me back to the rationalization and restructuring of government. We are firing over our own trend. It's a good thing to increase domestic arrears from 200 billion to 1.4, but the Auditor General's report put them at 13.4, 13.7 as of end of last financial year. So by now they have crossed through. But at least we are beginning to run faster to catch them. But by the time we catch them, the impact on the businesses is significant. The impact on people who are qualified to do government work. So we need to really find money to deal with the arrears, which is not something we may want to carry along. One or two things there. We still report, as I've said, electricity megawatts are very good to report kilometers of transmission lines, but can I have power in my shop? Can I have power in the salon? Ultimately, that is what we need to be working with. And friends of mine who are telling me power has not been in Nanklavio for a whole week, at least in the place where they work. That's not a good thing. So we might report some of these things, but ultimately we need to get down to the realities. The last bullet there was a concern, and I think it is in the background of the budget, that the labor force participation rate has been declining. So people are not participating, the laborers. That's a concern, and I'm saying if previous budgets were aimed at creating jobs, now the labor participation rate is going down, we need to question ourselves. What do we need to do? What should this budget and future budgets do to increase that? Because from 52.6 in 2016-17, we came down to 48 in 2021. We have dropped down to 43 in 2024, and it is higher or much lower in the rural areas at 39.3. That's a concern, because if the economy is about creating jobs and that's not coming through, it's an outcome, as I've said, that you want to take note of. The other part is poverty has dropped down 16.1 from 20.3, from all the way 30 years ago, 56%. But that drop in poverty should translate into realities if the budget is speak to people. Many times people will say, you guys talk about growth, but where is the growth? So if poverty has gone down, the best way for me as an economist who analyzes impact, not just descriptive statistics, but the impacts on this, what does this mean to the population? The first thing I picked out here is that net enrollment in primary has been declining. So if poverty is going down and children are also exiting schools, something is not right. Because you would want the two to work in the right way. That if poverty is going down, then children are being maintained in school. Could it be that children have dropped out of school to contribute towards the decline in poverty? That's also possible. As an economist, I am looking for a master's student to do this research, because this is already a problem. Poverty should not go down because children have left school. And it is in national level, rural areas and urban areas, and that is primary. The same story is true for secondary. Again, the children have been dropping out over that period. 32% in rural. Last year, that was 26. National level from 37 down to 33. So that the human capital development and involvement in the economy should be a concern for the budget. And the beauty with the budgets for this year, for these years, is the budget was already appropriated 3 weeks ago, possibly even more. So the budget speech is more of a strategy document, not numbers, because the numbers were already appropriated. We have heard them. So now we should be discussing these strategic level concerns to say, if I'm spending 11 trillion on human capital development, but children are not in school, then I have a problem. I'm not getting value for that money, but also I'm endangering the future of the economy. So those numbers don't add up with the poverty decline. I think there is one more here. You can look at the poverty rates in the different regions. Hope you can identify your region. Nobody here from Karamoja? Maybe that is the reason. Because with those levels of poverty, Karamojongi being in this room would be really out of big expectations. And if there is any here, he deserves a clap. Because really they have had to climb hurdles to make it in this place. I want to check where he grew up. He might be the Karamojong from around. But these are realities we want to take up because this is the period of the entire NDP3. So the NDP3 needs to lower those figures, especially for some places. I also had another slide on, this was released by UBOS last month. You can see places where health care was first sought among the people who fell sick. Government hospitals and health centers, 27%. Private hospitals and health clinics, 54%. So Ugandans are going to the private health facilities twice more than the government facilities. So something is really not adding up. Because when you go to a private health facility, it could be two things. People are wealthier, but I would wish they converted that wealth into further wealth creation processes. So these numbers, UBOS gives them to us, but we need to tease them out and say, what does this mean? But there's also 17% who just went to a drug shop. And so I have malaria, and of course the dispenser will give them the dose for malaria. Then they come back. I think it was typhoid. We have these things. You have an infection. Now people have generalized. You have an infection, just take an antibiotic. But you pay. So for me, something is not adding up. Because these are social indicators that should be speaking to the problem that budgets over time should be able to resolve. I looked at the exports market access, which was part of the theme. And we looked through that $1.4 billion of our exports, or about 16%, goes to the European Union. America, less than just about 120 million. So do I want to struggle with Trump? Not really as a market issue. But I know there are Ugandans who export things there. At individual level, they are going to be so passionate. And many of them call me and say, how can you not defend our trade to America? We send hash avocado there, we send rabbits. Please continue. But when you are a small speck in the cloud, I'm dealing with big things. The thing I want to discuss here is European Union, 1.4 billion. The bulk of this is coffee. You also have fish, things that the Dutch have invested. And in the budget, actually, they give us a hint. The biggest FDI for Uganda is coming from the Netherlands. And quite often they are in the fish sector. Yalero and a few other things. So you want to be looking at that. If you're talking about market access, the European Union is good to look at. Middle East is 31%. That is 2.7, but this is purely the United Arab Emirates, and that is gold. I think our exports for 2024 was about $3.5 billion. But we'll soon see the caveat on that one. It's a good thing, but you want to say, is the gold from Bukuya, from Busia, or from here? If it is not from here, then don't celebrate that your school has received members when these are refugees in transit. But it's okay, while they are there, they might buy something. But you need to, the school is about children, not people who are passing by. So we need to get our own gold, and that's why I like the conversation that is coming on capitalizing the mining company. Uganda has a lot of gold. We need to capitalize the mining company and get it out of the ground. We add it to this, then we'll be able to pick up the value. Those for me are easier, low-hanging fruits, and they will not require your standard gauge railway and the other railway and the pipeline. These are things we can get in 2 years. So can we be faster on that? Because they will help us to deal with the debt. When you talk about COMESA was good, 22%, about 1.9 billion, but COMESA, for as far as Uganda is concerned, 88.4%, this is our figures of 2024, is those 4 countries. So don't tell me the 22 members of COMESA. Again, those are squirrels and lizards and small birds. The real thing I want to be dealing with here is Kenya, DRC, South Sudan, and Rwanda. What is it that we are selling there? How do we continue to engage to keep those markets? So our deployment in Juba is justifiable. Because we are securing our markets, right? Our engagement in South Sudan, in the DRC, is justifiable. We are securing trade. If a budget is going to those areas, I want to be there. But also I want to say, what is it that we are selling there? How do we consolidate it? So the numbers are giving us those pointers. The rest of Africa, don't tell me, they can exist. So anybody of, is it Free Africa Continent or something? I've even bothered not to cram it, because it doesn't make sense for me. This Africa Free Continental Trade thing. No, these 4 countries is where I want to be having conversations with. That's the low-hanging fruit. When the other one comes, it will come. And as you can see, we also have a risk that the bulk, 58% of our exports is 2 commodities, coffee and gold. Coffee has external risks on the price. Brazil is coming back. So this week the price went down a bit. We don't know how far Brazil will succeed in coming back. But that is a threat to it. But still, coffee would be a game changer. Gold, as I've said, it is transit, but it's going to keep coming. Mr. Museveni has done some good political and geopolitical management that the gold will always transit through Uganda, unless if Trump picks interest, is not about to anyway. So for that, for now, we go on. But let's mine our own and add it there. Now, this black line is showing you mineral products that we are importing. And as you can see, we are at 3 billion of imports of mineral products. It's mainly gold. So when we sell gold of 3.5 billion, we have imported gold of about 3 billion. Our difference is about 500 million. Not a bad thing, but because when it comes here, most of those people you have seen where we are selling and exporting, they don't bring cash, they bring gold. The DRC fellows, the South Sudan. So it is feeding into the other aspects of the economy. That's not a very bad thing. But you want to make sure these dollars translate into central bank reserves. They translate into reducing the balance of trade. Because our balance of trade has been growing. If I was Trump, I would be imposing tariffs, but that's the wrong economics. You want to understand and say, how do I deal with these shortfalls? Who is this? It is mainly China and India, and you can't fight those 2. And Tanzania. Those are the 3 countries where we're importing goods from worth over $1 billion. China, India, and Tanzania. Really, Tanzania, I think we can do something. But not what Amin did. This should be a different arrangement. But those are concerns that I would want to see at strategic level that the budget is addressing these issues. I had this graph to tell us about foreign exchange reserves. As you can see, the line above is telling you how much of the reserves we have. But for safety in economic terms, we say how many months of imports are they equivalent to. Those are the big figures you see running along the bars. So we had 3.9, we had dropped down to 2.7, we are back at 3.3. So the central bank has been trying to buy some dollars and beef up these reserves. They recommended we would be happy if we're at 4.5. So we still have a long way to go to be able to sustain ourselves. But this excludes oil imports. If you put them in, the figures may go lower. But either way, we still have some fragility in that area that the budget should be speaking to. And that can come if we address these, the minuses that we saw earlier. I should be about to finish. When you want to grow the economy, Uganda, we are using a lot of supply side economics, build dams, build the industrial parks. When do you give households power to have effective demand? Because any economist will tell you the drive of growth is demand. And that demand can be local, it can be foreign. But you don't want to miss out on your local demand. China is struggling to make Chinese consume. They are refusing. They save over 55% of their earnings. Out of one-child policy, you can understand. So China has excited them to spend, to say if you buy a durable good, government will pay for you 60% of that item. They are still not spending. Can you please produce a second child? They have refused. So China is a huge saver. But literally it is saying if I can't find the demand out there, I must find it at home. Now in Uganda, we do not have sufficient demand. That's why I wanted to see in the budget what is in it that is directly helping households retain part of the money they have, even as we struggle to make them make more money. So I would have loved to see some provisions of raising pay as you earn, that threshold from 235 to possibly 500. Allow them to spend more. You don't make a loss. It is small money you lose, about 17,000 from them. But remember, it translates into consumption taxes. Now, when I tried to do a computable general equilibrium model to analyze what will be the impact of this, how much would come back in consumption taxes, I realized we don't have the data you need to run that model. We call it a sum in economics, a social accounting matrix. The one we have is too old, about 8 or so years older. So it couldn't give me the right picture. But this is something you want to model and share and say, if we do this, we lose this much, but we gain it this way. But also there are ripple effects in terms of economic growth. So that are some of the things that I wanted to, because you can see that black line is telling you the final consumption expenditure is different from households. The rest of the other lines are too far below. So if you want to grow this economy, households must be able to have more. Make sure they have money. PDM is part of the story, but not that whole story. Actually, if you do PDM minus demand, you run into another problem. This is also the budget in the trends that it had. If you're looking at development, we are going down on the development budget. And that's why the roads, the energy, the water are demanding. We don't have sufficient money to increase on the development budget. The recurrent is sometimes fixed out there. You can also cut it, and for me, this is the restructuring that we need to do under priority number 8 of the president. How do we make the blue lines go up? Those orange lines come down? Because even when you look through the budget for this particular figure, we have wages at 8.7 trillion, almost 8.5. Non-wage is 28 trillion. Development is 18, which is 25%, much lower than the other years. We need to find money to invest in the capital for this economy to be able to drive it. This is my second last slide I want to believe. Well, 2024, 2025, if you read the budget speech, the one that was read 1 year ago, we promised to borrow 8.96 trillion from the domestic market. 8.9 from the domestic market. By April, we had borrowed 17.3 trillion. We've just borrowed a little bit more in the recent after April. So what confidence do I have that when government says it's going to borrow only 18 trillion this year, it will end there? And the other third part is when we do that domestic borrowing, half of it is for refinancing. So you are borrowing to pay the debt. That's not good economics. These are fundamentals we must deal with. Like them or hate them, like me or hate me. I said I will share the claps you gave to Assad. I am not here for... But these are concerns that we have, and we need to think through them until we address this. So for me, back to the priority of the president, number 8, restructure government. Minus that, you have a problem. Because if you continue that way, these are your interest rates. Nobody can compete globally with those interest rates. That in January, a 10-year bond was at 17.1%. A 20-year bond was at 17.89. A 2-year bond was 16.2 in March. So if government is borrowing at that rate, any banker has to mobilize money for lending at that rate. Because this is what they use. They get a fixed deposit, and the fixed deposit, this is the benchmark rate. So if banks are going to mobilize resources at those rates, they can only lend at 25 plus. And what is usually quoted is the prime lending rate, 18, 19. But how many of you are prime borrowers here? This MTN can be a prime borrower, it may not borrow. So usually me and you are literally at 30, at 28 because of these issues. So with that in mind, it is going to be difficult to grow the economy because money and the cost of money is a key driver of growth. Anybody who has done economics knows there is an inverse relationship between interest rates and investment. So as they go higher, we must get these rates down. I would have given you the rates for China, 1.4%. They cut them this month. From 1.5, they felt 1.5 was too high. They lowered it to 1.4. And you are competing with Chinese in this town who are borrowing at those very low rates. So that, for me, is a nightmare that the budget must speak to. We must get back to those needs of government borrowing. We must get back to the needs of how do we lower the rates. Now, in terms of lowering the rates, I also need to lower myself back to my seat. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Mr. Muhuza, that round of applause was yours, eh? That one was not for Assad. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the economic side, but government said, I think it was Mr. Muhuza's presentation, another 500 billion has to be added on from new government tax measures. After the next presentation on tax, we'll have Ministry of Finance, a representative from Uganda Manufacturers Association. We'll have Mr. Muhuza, Dr. Muhuza back here, and you'll ask them those questions. Mr. Muhuza has mentioned some interesting points. Huh? You can also return the question back to him. What should government do? You have said borrowing is not good. You also first tell us what should we do. So feel free to return those questions. Huh? We'll have them. Right now, we're going to have Mr. Peter Chambade. The government this year is going to collect about 37 trillion. If we take out just about from local governments, about a few billions, about 320 something billion, the rest is coming from tax revenue and non-tax revenue. So please listen, because me and you are the taxpayers, eh? And now the national ID, the NIN, is going to be the tax number. So meaning that you will not leave this country. No one is going to allow you to run out of this country. You'll go to the airport, they put your NIN in the system, you're going nowhere, you owe us money. So please listen to Mr. Peter Chambade. His profile is there, and prepare yourself to pay tax like I have prepared myself. Thank you.
Okay, good evening. I think we have been sitting for quite a bit of time. Do you mind just standing up for just a few seconds? We stretch a bit. Okay. Yeah, it's important so that the blood flows and is healthy. Okay, I think we can have our seat. Thank you. So the next topic is taxation. And for our businesses to grow, we need to plan for taxation if they are to remain sustainable. Because as the previous presenters have said, first of all, from the global geopolitics, countries are now looking more inwards, which means we need to generate our revenues internally to a big extent. So, where will that money come from? From us seated in this room. And as such, it is important for us to get a good understanding of the obligations we have from a tax perspective and our rights, so that we can apply the laws well. As indicated, our budget this year is 72.3 trillion, of which 37 will be from domestic revenue mobilization. If you look at last year's budget, the expectation from domestic revenue mobilization was 32 trillion. That is an increment of 5 trillion in addition. Of course, the new measures, they said, is 586 billion, but what is expected to increase in regard to domestic revenue mobilization is 5 trillion. And when the minister was reading his speech, he indicated that moving forward, there's going to be more efforts or stepped up efforts to mobilize domestic revenue. And he indicated that the government is going to emphasize the following. There were 8 of them. Broadening of the tax base, eliminating corruption at URA through punishing corrupt officers and taxpayers who collude with URA staff, as well as leveraging on digital platform to minimize human interaction. So, URA is digitizing more to make them more efficient, to give them ability to analyze data better, and also to try to fight the corruption that is there. Then, number 3 said they are going to enhance implementation of IFRIS. I know there was a bit of an issue on IFRIS sometime last year, but I believe there is more understanding now, and we are seeing some measures also within this budget that are geared towards making IFRIS more friendly. So IFRIS is going to be a key area of focus. Digital stamps for the manufacturers and those who import certain aspects, that goods that have to get digital stamps. Rental tax solution. I believe a number of us here have rentals. The question is, do we declare our rental? Or to what extent are we declaring? So there's a solution that is going to be implemented to enhance rental tax collection. And then he also indicated there are going to be more regular audits. So which means, Mark was saying, if you look at the revenue mobilization, and also Dr. 586 only, from new measures, where is the other almost 3.5? I said the increment is around 5 trillion, and new measures are leading to about 586. Where is the other 4.5 trillion going to come from? Enhancing administration of the URA and the systems that they're using. So which means using the measures or the revenue measures already there, how can the government get more money? Which requires us to be more compliant, and as one of the things which is being indicated here, more regular audits, especially for transfer pricing. So, for entities here that have related party transactions, that is an area that is going to be focused on, and we see URA revamping the International Tax Office. Then combating smuggling for those who import, rationalizing tax exemption, and introducing sunset clauses such that if you have a tax exemption, then there's a clear time when it ends. Then amending tax laws to close loopholes that cause revenue leakage, and providing clarity to encourage voluntary compliance. And we have seen measures which are within these amendments to do that. And then strengthening URA through recruitment. I believe some of our organizations here may have lost people to URA. Recently, they were on a drive to recruit. So beware that the administration is being strengthened. So when they talk of doing regular audits, that is going to happen. And then, of course, supporting local governments to raise more revenue. So those are the 8 things the minister said this afternoon that are going to be emphasized from this year moving forward. in looking at the amendments, I've clustered them into 4. Encouraging those geared to encouraging investment and local manufacturing, those geared to promotion and enhancing tax compliance, and those geared to expansion of the tax base and then raising domestic tax revenue, lastly. So, when it comes to encouraging investments, one of the amendments that have come through is from a stamp duty perspective, whereby this year, this financial year, there's been a lot of cry by a number of entities due to enforcement that URA had started on agreements, whereby URA was demanding 15,000 per agreement. It could be staff agreements, it could be sales agreements, and you'd find maybe an entity has 100,000 agreements or 1,000,000 agreements, and for each URA was demanding that you pay 15,000. So definitely that was increasing the cost of being business, and as such, discouraging investment within the country. So if you are looking at conduciveness, that was a bit stringent. Also, they have removed stamp duty of 0.5% from mortgage deeds. I was speaking to someone who informed me that last week someone entered into a mortgage and he had to pay stamp duty of 1.3 billion. Can you imagine? So if that person had known about this provision, that it was coming in 20 days, he could have waited and he could have saved the 1.3 billion. So that is going to reduce the cost of mortgages, which is going to also encourage people to invest in that area. Then from an income tax perspective, we know that Uganda, they say it is a very entrepreneurial country with so many businesses coming up every day. And since we have a young generation which is quite innovative, there are so many startups which come up, but they say they die. They never see their first year or birthday. And to cure that, and that's why I say it's encouraging investment and innovation, government has introduced a 3-year exemption for startups owned by citizens, to the extent that the startup capital does not exceed 500 million, which I believe captures most of the MSMEs, the medium, small, and enterprises, and the businesses that many young people are starting. And that would definitely encourage more innovation, more businesses coming up, which will even grow the employment base. The other one to encourage investment is, which I picked under that cluster, is the extension of the tax exemption of Jagali hydropower for 1 year. And they said originally the bill was saying up to 2032, but I think the parliamentarians said it would be reviewed every year. And that is to encourage to keep the power tariffs within range And that definitely helps to encourage investment because cost of power is a critical input. So putting its costs at an affordable level encourages investment and growth. Then there's exemption of capital gains, where an individual transfers his or a personal asset to a business that they have formed and they control. Many people start businesses as individuals, and they acquire assets as individuals. And they get to a point that they want to formalize and form a company because probably through having a company, there are more opportunities for growth because you may even get in other shareholders, or if it's family business, for purposes of succession, it would be easier to have a company. However, within the law, there's what we call rollover relief, whereby if I am making transfer of an asset, there was a provision which would allow it not to be taxable if it's from a company to a company, but not from an individual to a company. So this is welcome because as investors who want to form companies, then this is a welcome amendment to make that happen and ensure that businesses or persons or individuals actually now can easily form companies and lead to more economic growth. Then the other aspect which is encouraging more investment, the exemptions we see in the VAT Act, whereby now solar lanterns are clearly exempt from VAT, so people dealing in those lanterns can invest, and also which would improve the environment, and also those investing in biomass pellets, that is also being exempted. Then billets are no longer exempt for VAT purposes. This is to encourage people who are manufacturing billets, because you would find that originally these would have inputs which are taxable, but when it comes to sell the billets, they would not be in position to claim input VAT because billets were exempt. So in this respect, having them exempt is to encourage manufacturers of billets so that they can be able to claim any inputs that they incur while they are getting those billets, requirements for the billets for manufacture. Then I know, and we know that we still need more airlines to come in. So aircrafts have been zero-rated. Aircraft leasing was originally zero-rated, but purchase of aircraft was not zero-rated. And making it zero-rated makes it cheaper or more attractive, because that means you can claim VAT when you purchase than when it is exempt. Then from an excise duty perspective, the provisions have remitted duty, excise duty. They're allowing for remission of excise duty on damaged and obsolete stock. For example, if you have manufacturers and you manufacture either beer or soda or another product, and At the point when it is leaving the factory, you pay excise duty. But when it's out there, it either expires or gets damaged. Originally, it has not been allowing for you to claim or for remission of that excise duty, which would make it more expensive. But a provision has been put in the law with certain conditions as highlighted for that remission. And to encourage value addition on the wheat bran, cotton cake, and maize brand, which is normally used in animal feeds, instead of exporting it raw, they have put an export levy of $10 per metric ton to encourage value addition in Uganda, because people have been exporting and then importing already finished goods, which becomes a cost to the country. Then the other amendments are for promotion or enhancing tax compliance. And we are aware that in the past, we had a waiver of interest and penalties if we paid our taxes by 31st December 2024. This now has been extended so that if you have principal tax outstanding as at 30th June 2024, you get a waiver on any interest and penalties to the extent that you pay the principal tax by 30th June 2026. This is important for us to note, that it will help us as taxpayers to put our taxes in order, which means you need to go back and recheck your affairs, do tax health checks, and see whether you have any outstanding taxes. And to the extent that you do, you are encouraged to get them paid, as long as they relate to periods up to 30th June 2024. And then penalties and interest will be waived. This should also be taken advantage of as we clean your tax ledgers, because moving forward, what your tax ledger says may lead you not to get a tax exemption, may lead you not to get a tax clearance certificate. So let us use this window to ensure that we clean up. Then IFRIS. As I said, IFRIS is going to be enhanced. And originally there were issues because people felt, or taxpayers felt, IFRIS was quite too stringent, mainly because of these penalties. Because you would have someone issuing a receipt of 2,000 shillings, and the old law said, if you issue a receipt of 2,000, which is not fiscalized, which is not through the IFRIS system, when you are supposed to do so, the penalty was 6 million. Even if the receipt was for 1,000, the penalty was 6 million. So that time when you had people really crying about IFRIS, the enforcement of these penalties had really come in. And you'd find someone probably issued 10 receipts of 1,000 each, totaling to 10,000. But now, 10 receipts of 1,000 each would lead to a penalty of 60 million. Okay? So that brought an issue, and now an amendment has been made in the law to say that, okay, if I was supposed to issue an IFRIS receipt and I did not, then the tax will be double the receipt amount, which encourages, because if you make a mistake, especially if it's not intentional and you have made a mistake, then at least from a compliance perspective, it will enhance use of the IFRS system. Then the amendments which are going to help expansion of the tax base in order to get the 5 trillion. The first one is moving forward from 1st July 2025. The national identification number and the business registration number which you get from URSB is going to be used as your tax identification number. What does this mean? It means that as long as I have a tax identification number, or as long as I've gone to register with the URSB, and I go and make any transaction anywhere, it could be with national water, it could be with, because these days when I go to get a water meter, they need my NIN. I go for electricity, they need my NIN. I go to register business, they need my NIN. So which means now there's going to be more correlation of information, and there's no need for more reconciliation, because if the NIN is the same as the TIN, then all your transactions are going to be monitored. And that way, for those people who have been evading or avoiding are going to be caught. And that is going to lead to the expansion of the tax base, which to me, it's a good thing for the compliant taxpayers like you in this room. Because right now, there are so many audits going on for many of us, because the tax base is small, and all the time URA is coming to us. But the more wider it becomes, the more economies of scale, and as such, since more people will be contributing, probably that will reduce on the gap we have of tax to GDP, which currently stands at 13.9, around 13.9, I think, for Uganda, vis-a-vis the sub-Saharan Africa, which is 16%. And then those who enjoy betting and gaming, moving forward, payments and payouts are going to be done through a centralized gateway system, which is licensed by the Bank of Uganda. What does that mean? That means still they are going to be able to monitor which people are betting, how much are we receiving, how much are we paying. And as such, if you can go out and bet, I hear some guys are big bettors. You can go out and bet 10 million in a night. But, okay, only that, 50 million, okay, in a night. And when they check the URA records, because now it is easy to track this, there is nothing they are seeing. Then you have to explain where these 50 million you betted last night, they are savings. So you explain. If they are savings, then you show that before you saved, you paid tax. So those are the two, generally, revenue, expansion of the tax base. And then finally, we are looking at the amendments to raise revenue. For people who import, and Uganda, I think, is a net importer, so most of the things we use, other than food products generally, are imported. So there's an import declaration fee of 1% on imports for home use. So whatever you import for home use and is not temporarily here in transit to go to another country unless it is among those which are exempt under the 5th schedule of the Customs Act, or it's not a plant and machinery, you are going to pay an extra fee on importation. So cost of importation of goods is going up, which means the cost of doing business is also going to go up, depending on the inputs that we use if they're imported. Also, we have been having infrastructure levy of 1.5% on some imports for home use. But now it is on all imports for home use apart from those highlighted as exempt under the 5th schedule, plant and machinery, and goods under special operating framework. So which means generally, cost of importation is going to go up by 2.5%. So if we have goods we have to import, try to bring them in before 30th June. After 30th June, you should be ready to pay an extra 2.5% unless they fall under those that are exempt. Then, dicto service tax is 5%. What the amendment is saying is that if you are non-resident and you provide digital services to your associate in Uganda, that means you are related parties. Instead of you paying a digital services tax of 5%, you will be required instead to pay withholding tax at 15%. So that service that you provide to your associate in Uganda, the withholding tax that will be applicable will be 15%, not the current 5%, which is applied as digital service tax. And then there are a number of amendments under the Excise Duty Act, mainly the normal culprit cigarettes. There's an increment of, like, depending on the different type of cigarettes, there's an increment of 10,000 shillings per 1,000 sticks. And other increments on fruit juices and sacks. So essentially, those are the measures to increase revenue, to enhance compliance, to expand the tax base, and for purposes of encouraging investment. So the question is, where does your business fall? What can you take advantage of? Where do you need to take precaution to ensure that your business remains compliant? Because tax compliance is the best way you do tax planning. When you do tax compliance, you have done 90% of tax planning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. For dissecting the tax amendments. For our next session, we're going to have a panel. It's going to be moderated by our one and only Mr. Benson Mwesigwa, a director in in advisory. I just like tax. And we're going to have our panelists who are going to come up and join him in our panel session. And like Mark said, these are the gentlemen, and you ask all the hard questions.
Don't forgive, eh? Hey, those questions that you've had, Ministry of Finance, URA, Uganda Manufacturers Association is like us, eh? So we'll consider them to be suffering with us. But the policymakers don't forgive. Again, the purpose of this session is for Benson to ask the right questions, but I think we'll give the people after that some opportunity to... Yes, Benson, please go.
Okay, and first A panelist to come up is Mr. Moses Kagwa. He's a Director of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance. Mr. Moses, you're welcome. Our next panelist is Dr. Fred Muhomuza. We heard from him, so he's going to tell us what the government should do instead of borrowing. Dr. Fred, welcome. And following him is his namesake, Mr. Ezra Muhomuza, Dr. Ezra Muhomuza, the ED, Uganda Manufacturers Association. Dr. Ezra, welcome to our panel.
Dr. Ezra is representing me and you, eh?
He's representing you.
The guys who are going to make the weaves. You said we are going to make
We are going to make the weaves, yes. And lastly, we have Mr. Sam Emeu Timothy, Manager, Tax Policy, Uganda Revenue Authority. So all the URA questions, the tax questions, will go to him.
Don't ask about IFRIS, it might come back.
You can ask him about pay though.
Don't ask about IFRIS, about EPS, just ask about pay as you earn, raising the threshold. Spencer.
Okay, thank you so much, MCs. Good evening. I think our panel today is really well balanced in terms of representation of various interests, because in the past, we've always not had a representative from Ministry of Finance and URA. And most of the questions will be posed to us, and then we'll look at each other, run to Fred Muhomuza, and he's also posing another question. So today I'm very excited that we have Ministry of Finance in the House and the URA. So at least now we don't have to labor much in terms of answering the questions. I think this is our second last event, our session, and we'll make it brief, because I notice many of you have been taking notes, you have many questions. So I'll just ask one question to each of our panelists here, and then we'll open this to you, because this is about you. And of course, Fred, you had an opportunity, so I'll not start with you. So I want to start with Dr. Ezra Muhomuza, who's representing manufacturers in the House and outside there. Now, Doctor, you've had the budget allocations, the priorities, the 10 priorities by the President. You know, we've had interest-free loans for large manufacturers. We've had duty remission of exercise duty. What do you make of this? How do you see this budget addressing the concerns of manufacturers? If you could start with that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Benson. To begin with, had it not been that it's a government budget and I was to discuss it somewhere, maybe at a bar, I would have said it's a consumption budget and therefore try to equate it to a wedding party budget. But that's not what it is, because it's government budget. As Dr. Fred indicated, we are still in the world of consumption. This budget cannot be trusted to take this economy to where we want to see it 50 years from now. That tells you that the ATM, the tenfold growth we're talking about, it's just the dynamics of passing the day. What I try to mean, the development component is not concrete, cannot be seen and be trusted that we can appropriate it. What do I mean? In his presentation, for instance, he's showing you that 88% of our exports go to East African countries. Now, when you pause and say, what is that we need to do to increase our export in these areas now that we know? For instance, to double the exports to East Africa by doubling it. It's now 88%. When you double it, it means you actually would not need to export to any other country. But now this budget as a tool for planning, a tool for development, what does it bring out? I should have seen, or I wish to have seen as a representative of manufacturer, some infrastructure drivers being given a priority in terms of how much are we going to spend on opening roads. You can look at the stretch from Rwanda to Arua. We have 3 entry points to Congo. But he has just told you that if you want to transform this economy, look at Congo. So how much are we appropriating in creating this infrastructure for export as drivers? There I would be speaking development. But in this case, I am speaking increasing wages for the people who have been at a strike. So to me, we lose on that as manufacturers. Number 2, the biggest for us as manufacturers achievement we have gotten from this. 2 months ago, we were in Parliament trying to justify an issue of stop exportation of raw materials. I'm very happy that we have been given 3 things: cotton cake, maize brand, and wheat brand. Ask a question, ask your neighbor there. How about other raw materials? How does iron ore leave Uganda? Ask your neighbor. So it's an open discussion. Someone will tell you, I don't know. So we wish the capping, this 10%, I mean, it's $10 per ton. Then what happens to these other raw materials? If we are talking about industrialization, and according to today's president, he was telling us that there has to be global positioning. If Uganda want to position ourselves in Africa as an industrializing country, basing on 2 things: agro inputs and mineral beneficiation. These are the key low-hanging fruits, as my colleague was saying here. Then how are we protecting these raw materials so that there is increase? So what they have given us, we clapped our hands, but now, you mean, look at maize brand, compare it with tin, compare it with copper. When are we waking up to these other raw materials? So that is the other key takeaway I want to say was good for us, was the government to continue to stay application of income tax to Bujagari, power producer. Because if this man called Bujagari was to pay that income tax and he slaps it into the price of power, would have a problem as industrialists. Much as we are not good at striking, but would have had problems. So staying that income, to me or to us, we think it's been a deliberate effort to ensure that power for industrialization continues to be affordable. But regardless of these other things and interventions, but at least on that one, we clap our hands.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Ezra Mumza. I think you've heard, he's telling us to open more roads, entry points to DRC. But as a Ugandan who lives in Kampala, we are looking at the roads around Kampala, so I don't know where we'll get financing to balance those 2 competing priorities. Now, let me go to Moses Kagwa. I'm not putting you on the spot to counter what he has said, but all of us here, we know you're at the center of these numbers. Would like to hear your take. Maybe start with the question Muhumuza put to us. And actually, before this session began, we were trying to debate that. Last year, our economy was estimated at 203 trillion. Now, 226. He took us back to elementary school in terms of percentage growth would be 11%, but we are now quoting 6.3. I don't know if you have any thoughts to that. And then maybe you first tackle that, then we'll have just one more question for you. Can you switch on your mic, please?
You give me all the questions.
Oh, okay. All the questions. Now, the other question is basically links to what Dr. Ezra has mentioned. He's saying these ATMs, is just dynamics. And yet, from what we've heard from the budget reading, we've grown by 6.3%. In the next year, we are estimated to grow at 7%. And when oil comes, we'll be going to double digit. Now, given the priority he has hinted on, do you think this budget allocation will sustain that growth? Are we able to realize that growth? What priorities should we be focusing on? Thank you.
Thank you. I liked what Dr. Muhumuza pointed out, saying that this budget is like, we are planning for a wedding. Said if it wasn't for government, but I think those are his sentiments. I don't know whether those are the sentiments of the manufacturers, the ones he represents here. I found it a bit abusive because, one, the budget process is very clear. For everybody in Uganda, he knows when we start the budget process. And people put forth their concerns. And when they put forth their concerns by September, we also hold countrywide consultations on what people would want the budget to be. And then there's a strategy. That strategy is taken to cabinet, then taken to parliament through the budget framework paper. After that, with the comments and the recommendations of cabinet, this is handled again by cabinet, approved, then it goes to parliament. So when we equate this to a wedding budget, then I really feel, I don't know which word to use. Because we really in this together. When you look at the priorities, and the minister was very clear where the money was going. Because when you look at this, first of all, we look at the 72 trillion budget. The 72 trillion budget is not all money that you can move from here to there and say now we have 72, how much of it has gone here. But I know when I was trying to look at this money, in this budget there is something called debt refinancing, 10 trillion. This is not actually money. It's a rollover of the domestic debt we have that we have not been able to pay. It's a rollover, but we say, okay, let's put it because we are going to go back to the people who we have borrowed from and say we can't pay you now. Can we roll over your debt? If you don't want, then somebody will come and take it over, then we pay you. So there is no actual cash there. Then we look at the project support, 9.6 trillion. That is money that is coming outside specifically for projects. And when there is someone says there is no money at all, there is money for irrigation in this 9.6 trillion. There is money for roads. There is, and that's the infrastructure we are talking about. There is money for electricity, the transmission lines. There's money to take electricity to the last mile beneficiary. All that is there. And when the minister was talking, he was very clear about where all the money was going in the ATMs. He put it there. He said the ATMs, agro-industrialization, this is the money I'm putting there. In tourism, this is the money I'm putting there. And for the first time, the people in the tourism sector, when they looked at how much money we had put there, that is the highest amount of money we have put in this area.
and they really appreciate. So when you look at mineral development, Dr. Fred here acknowledged that we are going to, one of the things we are going to do in minerals was to support the capitalization of the mining company. And why are we doing that? Because we don't want all our minerals to go out in a raw form. Actually, in this country now, there is a ban. You cannot export unprocessed minerals. So when we're talking about this, and you also mentioned something about the fact that we have concentrated on a few items which we are imposing a tax. We haven't actually banned. But for minerals, nothing is going out unless it's processed. And that's why you see even the gold. The gold is going out, processed 99.9%. We don't export raw gold as a way of extracting value. As to whether all this gold is Ugandan or not is debatable, because as you know, the porous borders, how this gold is coming in here, it has been a challenge. But we are having we are going to have big miners like Wagagai, and all this gold, we are going to actually get it in here. Processed, and then part of that gold, together with the gold of the artisanal miners, and Dr. Fred talked about it, about our reserves, that they are low. We are now going into purchasing of gold for purposes of reserves. Bank of Uganda is going to start doing that. We've already prepared a cabinet paper. We are just waiting for the date when cabinet will approve that and we start buying. But the process has really gone. Artisanal miners are being sensitized on what to do so that they can be proper traceability. Because if you don't have traceability, then you can't have much. But what I want to say in this budget, I don't want to repeat everything that is said in there. There is money for agro-industrialization. The minister was very clear on that. There's money for tourism. There's money for mineral and mineral development, and there's money for science, technology, and industry, including ICT and the creative industry. All that money is there. So let's look at the budget properly and analyze it and see where the money is actually going. On the issue that has been raised on where we are with the GDP, these figures are given to us by UBOS. So if there is any discrepancy in these numbers, we can go back to UBOS and question them. But as far as we're concerned, the projections that UBOS has given us for this year, ending this year, is that our GDP is going to be 226.3 trillion shillings. That is about $61.3 billion. So in case of any challenge on those numbers, we can go back to UBOS. But we believe that those numbers are correct. Maybe lastly, because of time, I see on this front here, there are no ladies. I don't know why, because we are budgeting, we are talking about the budget, and the ladies are the majority, but they are not saying anything about the budget. They're just listening. And my wife, for me, I told her that I will be back home by 10. Now it's past 10, so I may be locked out. I don't know where I'm going to spend the night. But, but just to talk about the revenue, how we arrived at the 37, because people have been talking about it. How do you arrive at 37 from 32? Where is the 5 coming from? And we are just mentioned that the measures are only 538. No, the measures are not 538. The measures are 2. There is what we call compliance. That's the effort, the extra effort URA is going to put in, and that is 1.89 trillion. And then we have the policy measures of 538. That amounts to 2,154. The rest of the money
is coming because of the growth in the economy. That even when you do nothing, you don't expect to collect less next year than what you have collected this year, because the economy is growing, businesses are growing. So there is something we call buoyancy. So the rest is coming from there, it's automatic. And those are the assumptions that we used to come to that figure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think one thing you've really clarified that the budget process is very elaborate and inclusive. So members, when they call upon you to participate, please be involved. So that when it's time for, passing the budget, you don't start saying, oh, the train has left me. And I think you've touched a bit on the priorities. And I want to pass on the message to the organizers. Mark, I know I'm part of your committee. We need to have you, boss, as part of the panel next year. Because as Dr. Fred Muhunda mentioned, last year we had that issue. This year, the discrepancy is there. So we need to have the real people who are dealing with these numbers tell us what's going on.
It's not a discrepancy. It's I don't want to call it a discrepancy. It's a controversy that can be resolved when we are all here looking at the assumptions.
Exactly. Thank you. Let me come to Mr. Samuel. Now, we've had from the start widening the tax base, and which comes with different measures that URA is putting forward. Digitization, e-freeze. Last year, I know we had the rental tax, compliance waiver. If you pay by 30th June, they waive the penalties and interest. How are you doing in that? Yet, when we look at the tax to GDP ratio, it's still the lowest in sub-Saharan. So, what are these measures doing? How would you assess the performance in terms of widening the tax base, or what is not working, or what is working?
Okay, thank you, Benson. You ask an interesting question. When I look at, first of all, the number of taxpayers that we have, if you look at the trajectory from 2018 to date, the register has grown from about 1.4 million taxpayers to about 5.1 million taxpayers. Yeah, and just from the last financial year, that's 2023-24, to the current financial year, there's been an increase of about 600 taxpayers on the tax register. Then also, when we look at revenue has been growing over the years. We've grown the revenue from about 19 trillion in 2019. Last year, we were able to collect about 27 trillion. And this year, we are projecting to surpass that target. So when you look at expanding the tax base, indeed, number of taxpayers have increased, and also revenue has grown. Now, what are some of the things that we are doing as URA? I think some of them, Peter mentioned them in the presentation. We've recruited quite a number of staff that we intend to, right now they're undergoing training, but we shall deploy them because we want to reach out to some of these far areas. Then also we are opening up more offices, more liaison offices. So we shall operationalize about 5 offices in the next year. That is, we shall open up an office in Gweyale, Kagadi, Kisoro, Kapchora, Kansanga, and this is all in an effort to be closer to the taxpayers. Because one of the issues that has been coming up is that we are not everywhere. So we are trying to open up more offices, but also we are leveraging on technology you talked of IFRIS. Of course, we had a setback. The president suspended the penalty. He didn't suspend IFRIS. I need to clarify that the president didn't suspend IFRIS. What he suspended was the penalties. So for those of you who are VAT registered, most likely you have been issuing IFRIS invoices, and also for you to benefit from input tax and also claim expenses from VAT registered people, we would still require you to use the IFRIS invoices. Then the other thing also to increase on traceability, we've been implementing the track and trace, that is the digital tracking solution. And so those are some of the things that we are doing as URA to increase on the tax base and also revenue.
Thank you so much. In the interest of time, Fred, since you're already here and you gave us a good sermon, I will let the public judge you by asking you, so I will save you. So members, you've been attentively listening and taking notes. I'm sure you have many questions. So we are going to take a few questions. So Mark and Jemima are moving around with the mics. If you have a question, put up your hand. You tell us your names, the institution you work for, and who you raise your question or comment to any of the panelists here on the podium. We can take like 4 questions and then another round, and then we'll... So we have, yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Jemima. I just want to come and fix myself in the middle of those gentlemen so that the ladies are represented. I feel like we are not well represented. I want to commend KPMG for this wonderful year on national budget analysis. And I want to say I was here last year. I'm happy to pick on the comments from Dr. Muhumza on the errors in the budget of this. To say that even last year this was highlighted, that what was reported in the budget was not accurate, but however, Ministry of Finance did not pick this on, and to date, they are still giving us wrong rates. So this is to you, Mr. Kagwa. Why are we not picking this up? Why are we not giving Ugandans the right percentages? Why are we misleading Ugandans? Next, the other question goes to the other Muhumza. He rightly stated it that this is a consumption economy, and we are not blind to this. Our cash cow is from VAT, our cash cow. But then the question is, what have we done to bring this to the attention of Ministry of Finance, such that since 60% of the budget is going to be funded by domestic revenue, our tax amendments should be really focused on improving consumption, maybe consumption in the economy, such that we increase our tax collection from that area. Okay, so to be very clear here, looking at the current amendment, every year we have amendments. They come in, they are phased out, okay? Are these amendments really looking at improving consumption in the country? What are they even looking at? Are we looking at improving consumption, yet it's a cash cow and it's a consumption economy? Or we are just amending the tax laws for the case, for just. I'm just asking. Number 2, the issue of rental tax. And this is to the gentleman from URA. The law is very clear that if a taxpayer has incurred taxes to generate income, if a taxpayer has incurred expenses to generate taxable income, these expenses should be allowable as deductions. However, a taxpayer whose main primary activities primary activities, rental income, is still punished that the expenses, allowable expenses, are capped at 50%. And this was not addressed in the tax amendments. Okay, where are we on this? I mean, you are your tax collectors, but I mean, you need to be concerned about this. It is not fair. So in the issue of fairness, I think we have moved away from the principle of fairness as far as tax collection is concerned. We are about collecting 32 trillion. But how about going back to the principle of fairness? One, the fact that tax losses are now capped, we are going to force taxpayers to write off their tax losses after 7 years, when it's very clear they are still paying, they are still in tax losses. Number two, capping the expenditure of rental tax at 50%, and we are just shying away from addressing it. And then lastly, I just want to say this because it's really a pain. Right now, we are having tax collectors asking us why we are either underpaying our directors compared to other companies. I mean, what kind of benchmark they are using to determine that we are actually underpaying, and then they are making estimates and issuing assessments, yet they know that these tax ledgers are the basis for us to get tax clearance certificates, and they keep issuing all these assessments that are erroneous. I just wanted to put that out there so that, okay. Food for thought. Thank you, Jemima.
Please, your name?
I didn't mention my name. My name is Zuriat Nakayenga.
Okay, thank you. A couple of questions. Mark, yes?
Thank you. My name is Grace Zalwango, and I work for Yadelo, Uganda. My first question goes, I think, to the tax person or the policymakers. Now, it is on the raw materials, the ban and the increased taxes on raw materials. I'll borrow words of a great man that an omelette cannot be made at the farm, but rather it has to be brought to Sheraton. So is this the right time for us to ban raw materials, yet it is also in the other hand, we're saying we need agro-processing, we need value chains. So as a country, are we ready to do the processing of the raw materials, or are we just in position to take out the raw materials, the coffee bean or the maize bran? Is that what we can afford as a country, or are we ready to process? So I think there is a mismatch there. And two, still on tax, I think the SME's 3 exemption is a short period for citizens. Yes, we thank you. It is a good start, but I think we need to increase that period, because ideally it works because already the business is already in loss-making positions for the past 3 years. So it is more of formalizing the individuals who have been informally trading, but they're already in a loss position for those 3 years. 10 years, 5 years, I think that is a good run. But yeah, thank you. Those were my submissions.
Thank you so much. Can we have just one more? Just one more, and then we come back here. Oh, Jemima.
Thank you. Nicodemus Okoboy. I work with the BAT. And I know I get a lot of, is BAT still in Uganda? Yes, we're still here. But it's not the question I'm going to ask. I think mine will go to Dr. Muhumuza, and I think it's around this next financial year. Part of the road development allocation is going on the Central African Republic Road. And I think, I don't know how many people are excited about business in Central African Republic, but I think that there's a potential gold nugget in that market. Could you sort of take us maybe in 2 or 3 sentences why and what you think about our collaboration with the Central African Republic and what opportunities we have as a country and as potential manufacturers and investors? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think this was for you, Dr. Fred Muhumuza. Great. I have 3 more questions here. Maybe I should read them, and then when you answer, we finish this session. The first one is for you, Dr. Fred Muhumuza. You should be part of the team formulating the budget. I don't know whether you've made an effort and has been denied, or maybe you can speak to that. 2, now I'm reading, these are not my words. Mzei's priorities for the year, I think they should as well be prioritized. What are his most important and how do they plan to cover them? I don't know who should take this question, but since we have Moses Kagwa, maybe you and Fred Muhumuza, you'll see how to cut it in the middle. 2, how I wish these conversations happen before the budgets are out so that they can be adjusted. I think Moses answered this very well about the budget process, but maybe if time allows, you can quickly see how to cover it. Great. URA, opening up more offices may not be a good solution since it will increase the expenses. Use the idea of mobile money and have people to get commission of services offered to URA. Well, this handwriting is quite tough, so what specific contributions has URA? I think I will have, Mark, you'll have to come back and maybe we'll get a chance to. Okay. Maybe let's first answer these questions, quite interesting questions from the audience. Muhumuza, let's start, Dr. Fred Muhumuza, let's start with you. And then we go to Moses, and then we'll come back to our colleagues here.
About the roads in Central African Republic, I don't have a lot of information, but what I do have is part of the goal is the country. So maybe we are trying to expedite the construction of that road, getting here or even something back. But that's part of the story around there. And I think the present priorities, as I've said, were put through the chain. We are trying to interpret them and of course the next trips back to the field. So we are on this one to check the field access, what we take to support the private sector, and as I said already, the interest in that as another issue. Because if you really want to support the private sector, you need to lower the interest rates. You know, lowering interest rates is getting back to the government appetite to borrow in those many areas, which will require structural reform. So once you put the linkages together, for really giving us a high level cover, and then we'll be able to get the grips and we see how far we proceed. Knowing very well that in a few months we'll be finalizing the migration. So that is also another political angle we want to have communication. Maybe that is as far as I go, being part of the team, working on the sidelines. Those are the things. I think value addition, rightly so, we have issues on how to approach it. can't be by tariffs like that. Because when you say stop this year, are we ready to add value to some of the things? Or we want to gradually walk the journey, like the way we reduce taxes, maybe reduce down the taxes of the PSC. You want to cascade and say these kilos are going to come. So the $10, don't say the $10 have come this year. You might submit to increase 3, 5, over 3 years I will have this. So that people are home to look for options and invest. Otherwise, they might come like Trump, because they tax now. By mid of July, after 2 weeks, they're like, okay, I've suspended this. You just need to suspend something yesterday. But I think that is also showing that we actually respond when need arises. So please give us the evidence. If need be, we have shown you can respond and suspend. We'll be watching.
Thank you so much. Moses Kagwa, I think you noted your questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you, I will start with Julian. Thank you for the questions. One on the GDP figures, as I've said, we are going to be concerned. There is no wrong number we have given. We are going to be concerned because we don't put wrong numbers out there. So it's, I don't want to go into this details. Because we'll be here for a long time, and I've been even discussing with Fred about whether this is real or nominal. And when you have nominal growth, is it 6.3% or 11%? So those are the things that we are going to clarify. So there is no errors in these numbers. I just want to reiterate. I think I'll leave the tax for him, otherwise we'll have to say that. But when we're talking about measures, there are measures we bring in a year, and that's what we concentrate on here and say this. Because now you can't come here and say, why did you reduce tax of fuel in this budget? We'll be asking a question, maybe not for this, because now we are looking at the budget we have and what is in it for us. So I wouldn't want to go into why we need to introduce any changes in rental, but URA may be handling that. On the ban of export of raw materials, we are between the rock and the hard place. Manufacturers of animal feed are telling us we don't have raw materials. This is the raw materials. And they are telling us that this with maize bran, everything goes out in the raw form. And for you, the Alera will kill you because when it goes out in the raw form, it goes to our neighbors, they add value on our own and bring it back in and sell it to us. So why shouldn't we encourage Uganda to produce the animal feeds here and then sell them to Yalero? And I know Yalero brings in fish feed from Uganda. They don't bring in raw. I wish we could bring in raw feed, raw materials from Uganda and make it here. But no, you don't do that. So that's what we are encouraging. And the philosophy of government here is value addition. We've been talking about value addition for a long time. Let's add value to what we have here. It makes more sense. We are now getting about 2 billion shillings from exporting coffee beans. But if we add value, wouldn't it be a good thing to add value and send it out when it's value added? So those are the kind of things that we are looking at. And then SME exemption is short because it companies are already in loss-making position for 3 years. We are not looking for existing companies. We are looking at new, which are going to come into
effect from 1st July 2025. So we want to encourage people to formalize and say, okay, if I formalize and I start doing my business, 3 years down the line, maybe I'll be profitable and I'll pay something. But let URA not disturb me for this period. We have seen that when you go to supermarkets, you find that small things like daddies and cakes and what have you are being sold or are being put there by big companies or even foreigners, because they are formal, they have managed to meet all the requirements. The Ugandans are hiding because they fear tax, that now when I start, I'm going to pay tax. So we hope this one is going to bring them out to be able to supply goods to the big manufacturers, to supply goods to the big taxpayers who don't want to deal with people who are not registered. So that's really the whole issue. And on HE's priorities, I want also to clear the air here. The budget that was read today is the budget of the president, because he's the Minister of Finance. He only delegated Honorable Kaisaija to exercise his duty. Okay? And of course, when Honorable Kaisaija completed presenting the budget speech, President said, I have two other issues that I'm going to talk to you about: East African Federation and corruption. He didn't say, oh, but you people in this budget, you do not take care of my priorities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Coming to you, Samuel, I think you had the highest hit on rental tax, on amendments, and tax losses. If you could just address those.
Yes, thank you. Of course, some of the questions have been answered by my boss, Mr.
So you concur?
Yeah. So I will not address those that he has answered. But then I'll start with the first one. There was one where I think it was Julian who asked that URA is asking the companies to uplift their pay as you earn. Of course, from a compliance perspective, there are very many parameters that you will follow when you're looking at compliance. For example, you have companies where they are saying they got directors' loans. Yeah? But then when you see how much they are saying their directors earn vis-a-vis how much the directors are lending to the company, there is a mismatch. So in such instances, they will be tempted to lift the tax that these companies are paying. It's called a means test. That if you're driving a Range Rover, you cannot tell me that you're earning 300,000 because just the fuel for that Range Rover exceeds the 300. So those are some of the parameters that you may need to check that probably the officers looked at. But also, in case you're not satisfied, we have a dispute resolution mechanism that you can always object, and then these assessments are reviewed. She mentioned the thing. She mentioned rental tax. That expenses are capped at 50%. Yes, it's true. Expenses are capped at 50%, but that is for companies. The expenses are capped at 50%, and then tax at 30. So effectively, I think the tax rate is about 15. Now, when you come to individuals, the tax is 12% of the gross, but we allow you a threshold. So Of course, there have been some discussions on reforming the rental tax, especially since there is also property tax that is collected by the local government. These discussions are ongoing, and probably we may have some reforms in the future on this. There is an issue on why is URA opening up more offices? Why don't we use the agency? Why don't we borrow from the agency model? Perhaps we need to be alive to the context that we are operating in. When you look at Ugandans, they want physical touch. Because even when you look at the banks, they have not done away with the banking halls, much as they have tried, they could go digital, but we still have the banking hall because there are people who want that physical touch. And of course, it's a good idea, the agency model. We use it in some aspects. We work with agents like the KPMGs. They carry out some tax health checks, then they write to us. It's something that we are exploring, but also we are alive to the environment that we are operating in. That if you don't have presence, if people are not seeing you, they tend to forget. So that's why we are going out there to remind them so that they don't drop the ball. Yeah.
Great. Sorry, excuse me. Thank you so much, Samuel. Let me come to you, Dr. Ezra Muhumza. There was a question about what UMA is doing, working with the Minister of Finance. What have you done to bring these issues to the Minister of Finance?
Thank you. I think I'll answer that question after Julian's. She poses a question on the domestic revenue. And according to what the presentation that we have had since we came in here, it is becoming glaringly clear that domestic revenue is the sustainable and most likely reliable source of financing our budget today and for the future. So we ought to give it some good attention, and I thank you for bringing it up. But there are two fundamentals that affect that source of revenue. One is the fiscal discipline. Fiscal discipline, I imply, how is this money collected? Today, for those who heard, they'll say, URA, the bad people are being chased. You pose a question and say, URA collects money. Then how about the others who use the money beyond correction? We are observing some elements or signs of fiscal indiscipline. One is the value for money. We all know here that when you go to government, there are two valuations. The procurement of a car at government level is not necessarily the same as a private car when you are purchasing. This is obvious. Then you pose a question, do we see the discipline required from these so-called government office holders in promoting the principle of value for money? The answer says no. Whether I am intimidated or not, the answer is that the value for money at the market level is different from the government. Second is related to discipline, the government areas. You come to the private sector, you have a public debt of 59 trillion. And you say, I am giving you 1.4 this year. If we take it that every year they are going to be giving us back 1.4, it means we need a minimum of 59 years to recover our areas that we will use to build the economy such that we increase the domestic revenue correction. Now, reason why the domestic revenue source is crumbling is because the ejection is beyond the injection. We are seeing money getting out, but it is not coming back to build the economy. That is another sign of fiscal indiscipline. The last one is the cost of certain decisions. These decisions, they affect the domestic economy. For instance, you have had something to do with EPS that has been on. It must have been someone's very good decision, but now it has been called off. What happens, God forbid, if the private person that was brought into this business goes to court? We'll see in a budget someone saying we have to compensate that guy because he took us to court. There are so many decisions that are made, they hurt the economy, they go unpunished. But on the other side of the revenue correction, if you don't pay today the tax, they are on you. But when the other person who made the decision that made the cost, what happens? Do we see equal treatment of these errors, whether by commission or not commission? The answer is no. The fiscal discipline, the basic principle of understanding what we call the fiscal policy, is to look at the income and the expenditure. So the discipline that the payers have who are on the income side, is it the same reflected by the spenders? The answer is no. Lastly, government seems to be losing money, especially from the definition of the direction the government is taking us. For instance, last NDP, we were talking about programming, where we had 18 programs. We are told they are all going to be creating linkages, they are all going to be coming in, and we all went into planning that. All of a sudden, we have lost that, put it aside, we are addressing something new. Talk about the local government. If any of us recall the late Nsibambe paper that spoke to local governments, it was supposed to be actually a production unit in the economy. But right now, local governments that we have are all parasites of central government revenue collection system. Most of them, they are taking more than what they collect to bring back. What does that mean? We have a little bit shifted from the original positioning and the thinking of the creation of the local government economy. Now, we have one economy supporting other economies. This is what I'm trying to say. When we position and say this is the direction we take, rationalization is one of them. Can someone ask a question? We are rationalizing creation of these agencies. When did we get there and when are we getting out? Yes, it's very good to rationalize, but again, how did we expand these agencies? How are we sure that this strategy we are taking to reduce government expenditure through rationalization is going to see the end at the end of the day? It can also get collapsed along the way when we have already put in some money, sunk in, and we can't recall this money. This is one way we are increasing our debt burden. Because we put it in two things, some of them we never deliver them, some die along the way, and it is a deadlock. That is fiscal indiscipline. that we need to deal with as a country to be able to reduce the debt burden, to be able to have equal confidence that the revenue I will give will do what exactly it is supposed to do. Lastly, on the question of Zarwango, are we ready to do the processing of the raw materials? I'm very glad that the minister today talked of it. He said that we have a prospectus concession to supply 3,700 buses to West Africa. Where I was, I clapped my hand. Meaning we are at the level, and there is it is gospel truth, because I am in two industries and I know we have industries which are doing this, led by a government-supported industry. We are at the level of producing automotives. We are at the level of doing sophisticated industries. All these equipment you see here, we can produce them here, and we are producing them. Until you believe in yourself, we cannot be doing a vehicle and we cannot process agro inputs. We have the capacity as manufacturers, those who are already in existence and those who are yet to come, to process these raw materials into value-added products. So there is no question about that. Zarwang, I want to give you that confidence. Lastly, you're talking about the engagement into the process to do the budget. One of the things that private sector actually we thank government about in the recent years is an engagement into these processes. Let them be strategies, let them be this budget. And we also know that the government does not, the economy, let me put it clear, in our economy, we do not have enough money to indulge into development projects so that we get proud of a developmental budget. It is because we know we are still struggling with putting certain things right. However, the best person to give the right name to a child is the one that has been involved in the process of raising this child. So when I say that the budget that I participated into is more of consumptive tax than development, it means I am sure and I am ready to own it. Let it not come from anywhere else. I own it because I've been in the process, and so is the reality. So there is no question that whether the process is okay. We are now talking about the output. And until we agree and talk about it glaringly, honestly, clear, we will not be able to address certain constraints to be able to go to the developmental budget that we all idealize. I thank you.
Thank you so much. In the interest of time, I think this discussion has to end here because otherwise we'll end up remaining here talking to ourselves. I'm going to break protocol. In most cases, panelists, you're given a chance to give closing remarks, but I think what you've shared is quite enough. If there's any question that has not been answered, definitely we are going to compile all these questions and make sure that there's an appropriate answer that can be shared with you as part of the tax and economic briefs that we'll be sharing. With those few remarks, join me in thanking our panelists for a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. I hand it back to you.
Thank you, Matt, Benson, and our panelists for the wonderful presentation. Right now, we shall have our closing remarks. Oh, okay.
Okay, clearly, on behalf of KPMG, allow me to say thank you to all of you. We do understand we have run out of time, but we appreciate you for your patience. And now we want to bring this to a close by asking God Almighty to take you back home safely. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation. Thank you. And a good night to you all.
Uliwembera tubafumbi uliwentula nkulaba uliwetambula kuweka uliwenyimba kuzanya endongo yange nimbira oluyimba endongo yange wagala nimbira kayimbako nimbira kayimbako nimbira kayimbako endongo yange endongo yange endongo yange endongo yange usimye ncha no one can explain the love that I have for you owumuze ebirowoozo n'okakkanya omutima gwange teryakwekana endongo yange nyimbira oluyimba endongo yange nyimbira oluyimba nyimbira kayimbako nyimbira kayimbako nyimbira kayimbako endongo yange endongo yange endongo yange endongo yange nyimbira kayimbako nyimbira kayimbako nyimbira kayimbako endongo yange endongo yange endongo yange telekerera endongo yange endongo yange